for the day.
Oh, from the two people.
Okay,
Oh, okay, he emailed me.
We'll go ahead and get started. I apologize for the mix-up on the chart. Did not have time to devote to it this weekend. And some of the motions were coming in
Link
pretty
a
late.
Facebook post.
But it looks kind of like this if you got the
I
second
did
one.
send you that.
And that's what we use to guide the discussion. And I completely missed Brent. Did I miss anybody else who claimed a motion or two or three? Okay. And the motions that we did get, for the most part, are attached. It's a two-page, the attachment's the last thing I sent out. I apologize for getting that out so late. Some of the stuff is still coming in on Monday.
No.
Are they? I don't know.
Seems like
I
it.
didn't
The
even look.
motions voted on are, but it was Carl's chart, not your chart.
Yeah, maybe we should get copies of this. Yeah, let me, can we get some copies?
You're being summoned. So gonna be short.
I read your document.
Is that a second phase for that house?
No, just saving you 6,000.
No, it's still, we're battling the first, yes. Okay. First and only.
But it's the third plan.
Originally, it was all council. I was here.
We could have used it.
Are there any corrections, changes to the minutes or the motions that were voted on last time?
In the minutes, thank you.
No, we went, yeah.
In the minutes, I did notice, and I sent him an email, CC12, his numbers were all high. It was members present last time. I think he had 20, and I counted, I think 19. And members absent, I think was 5, and he had 4, I believe.
I think member president's got Joel and Jeff, and that's messing
Oh. So it should be too short.
Well, you guys keep us straight, what do you mean?
That's right.
You said you only wanted
You don't count?
You don't count. Trusted by the, I don't know about.
Consultants. I paid consultants.
You get more money for consultants.
I did consultants.
Okay, so anything else? So what did the votes at? Like, 16, 17?
We have some people who don't.
I think the votes are right, I think it wouldn't.
Okay, the attendance,
Here,
yeah.
the attendance.
17, 17.
Right.
Yeah, it looks like the votes are at least consistent, so we're just questioning who was actually, probably exactly it. Okay, any other changes or questions? Should we approve those by acclamation?
Yep.
That's, okay, so the two lists, actually James is making copies of it. The first one that was claimed by both Cole and Brent was the high school test, high school test and value middle school test. We didn't have a motion for that. So if you guys-
I was only claiming the middle school part of it.
Okay,
So, and Britain probably had to come out of the high school part of it, is it?
okay. You wanna, let's see, high school is first in the statement, so go ahead, Brent.
Before we start, may I say something?
Yes.
I'm counting, we have, looks like 15, is here, 15 voting members? 16?
16.
So we're missing 6? Not good.
And two against, and you can't pass anything.
Well, and once again, not your fault by any stretch of imagination, but this is pitiful.
Well, this was the only date.
No,
when the 15
again, I
respond,
swear,
yeah.
again, I can't stress enough, you guys have done your job and then some. But this absence of the members consistently out for greater than 50 to 60% of the time is just putting us in a burden. We can't get anything.
And we didn't pick any days that didn't have at least 18
Well,
or
I know,
19.
I know.
We had 18 or 19, so we knew there would be a couple
I know
of
that.
them.
But I'm just saying on the record that it is pitiful.
Christine is coming late. She said she'd be here. Okay, she said she'd be here. No, she's due.
I hope these people that are absent all the time, if we get certificates of appreciation, don't receive them, because they don't deserve it.
Okay, Brent?
Shall I lead with an introduction?
I'm sorry?
Shall I lead with an introduction or?
How about introduction, so we know what you're talking about?
So, what we're going to be discussing is item number 8, which is to add a high school test to APFO. Should be fairly self-explanatory by now. Everyone's very familiar with the elementary school test. Everyone should be very familiar with the middle school test, what their pros and what their cons are. And the one missing component in APFO currently is high school tests. We have progressed from only looking at elementary schools in the original APFO to a revision several years ago, which included middle schools. And we still find shortcomings in APFO, which has brought us all here. And it is time to look at high schools as a criterion for APFO. High schools represent 1/3 of Howard County students. We have, what, 19,000 students in our high school system right now? It's a critical period of their lives. They're going through advanced classes. They're moving on to college and advanced careers, and it is very, very critical that we provide the best school system for our kids at all levels. Granted, young children, we want to protect them, but as the children get older and go further through their system, the high schools will determine their career path, and where they go to college and what they do with their lives. This is very critical. Every parent I've talked to and citizen groups across the county believes this is important. I have had nearly 0 parents in the school system that have said, no, let's let this one slide. This is important to them. And among this group, providing adequate public facilities for our residents is our mission here. And how do we solve that? And in this particular case, I believe that looking at APFO, we have mentioned in the beginning of this that APFO has worked to some extent. Without an APFO, we would be in a worse situation. By applying various tests via APFO, our situation is better than had it been without one. In this case, a high school test would conclude the entire gamut of our school system to ensure that we have adequate public facilities. I recognize a good feeder system from elementary to middle and on to high, and the cohort survival rate and numbers of that sort do affect this. And if you had an absolutely perfect APFO for elementary and middle, perhaps we could skip a high school test. But it isn't perfect. It has compromises in it. And this is why I'm proposing an entry-level test for this criteria. The methodology, the counting and everything, what I'm going to propose is simply add a high school test using the same criterion as our elementary school tests. Using any, make sure I get my language right, any provisions that we have agreed to and voted on as a group for elementary school. We may have differences in rates and amounts, but I'm going to lead off with what is appropriate for our elementary and middle school children should be appropriate for our high school children. And I don't think we should disservice them by not factoring them in our public facilities. I agree this will be a burden on the county, but it's a necessary burden. And it's to the benefit of us all, and it's to the benefit of the people that invest in the community.
Joel or Jeff, can you comment on?
Well, I know the history of APFO started in 1992. So it started with the elementary school test. And then when the APFO committee reconvened in around 2000, early 2000s, that's when the middle school test was added. I think the discussions, when there was discussions about high school tests, was that something to do with capacity not quite being the same issue as much for high schools as it is for middle school and elementary schools, given the programmatic aspects of high schools and the flexibility and the way they want to do it and things like that. I'm certainly not an expert on that. That's just what I recall the discussion about, why there wasn't a high school test. I don't remember if high schools at that time were crowded or not. Maybe they weren't. And maybe that's why it wasn't necessary. And it may be different now. Maybe there is more of an issue now than it was back then. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, I mean, he's right that, the programmatic is a little different at the high school level because it's in elementary school you have a grade in a class and then they go to their special programming like music or whatever and then they go back to their class. In middle school you have a little bit of moving out, so you basically have some areas of the school that are being used by a teacher as they're playing while the children are doing a different kind of period. And then in high school, you get even more of that with the full A/B scheduling. So, it does mean that you don't get the exact same utilization out of the room that you do at the elementary level, but it doesn't mean you can't build a test around it. I mean, I think it's a doable thing as far as the mechanics of it. The only thing that occurs to me, and this is just me thinking, so you don't feel this is in the face of what you're proposing, is that whether we have 0 tests or we have all 3 levels tested, we still have to capital plan for all 3 levels. So if there's an APFO test that indicates a problem at any level, we are still coming back each year and looking at the capital budget as one of the ways of addressing that. And we still have a policy on redistricting that's causing us to come back and look at crowding at the schools at all 3 levels. So if, for any reason there's, we have to stick with what we have or it gets changed, I feel like there's a few other ways that we get to address the problem. So, but I think it's a legitimate idea. I wouldn't stop you from voting for it. If you want that, we'll make sure it happens.
I think part of the reason there wasn't initially a middle school test and there was a high school test is that part of the main reason for APFO is to give the school system some breathing room and help create a planning tool for creating the capacity. So the thought was, if you know how many kids are in the elementary school, it's much easier to predict that they're going to, what the middle school population is going to be, and then for middle school, what the high school population is going to be. And the yield for each increasing level in a new development is less. So there's more families that have elementary school kids buying a house than there are families with middle school. And when Joel sent the yield that I converted into the cost per classroom matrix that I showed a couple of months ago, the yield for high schools for a single family was 0.09 students per single family home, 0.04 students per townhouse, and 0.02 high school students for an apartment. So that just sort of demonstrates that new homes are not really adding a lot to the high school population. So most of the high school population you already know is coming from elementary to middle to high school. So that was, I think, it's one of the main reasons it wasn't included initially or previously.
So Brent, your motion then?
My motion initially is to repeat the language of our elementary school test and provisions that we've agreed upon for elementary school test. The testing methodology would be what we've agreed to as a valid test for APFO. In this particular case, we're just covering the different grades.
Another little bit more information on this.
Oh, go ahead.
So, way back when we were first gonna get to schools, I'd asked Joel to do a hypothetical high school test to see what it would look like. And I think this went to everybody, but this was way back in October or November. And 6 of the 12 schools, high schools, in the county would be closed at 115%. So half the county would be closed to development if you had that 115% high school test. The county as a whole is at 110%, so the county as a whole, and 4 schools are well below 100%, but there's probably even more reluctance to redistricting at the high school level than there is at other levels. So it kind of exacerbates the problem of the imbalance in the utilization of the facilities that exist already.
Do we have a second for Brent's motion?
Second.
Okay. Points, pros, cons, questions?
My question would be, we went round and round with the readings test changing to an adjacent school test. And I'm wondering if we added so many other things to it, to have the money, but I almost would rather see the readings test change to the adjacent test for both elementary and middle, if we could tackle it at that level, we wouldn't have to tackle it at the high school level, because if you're checking each school, I don't know if that would be.
Well, that's what the discussion was, because there is no high school test.
Yeah.
It was only related to elementary
Right.
and middle.
But I'm talking about where we were talking about the Regents test, the way it's set up now versus doing an adjacent school test, because then you wouldn't have these pockets that are left, because the Regents test now, you've got pockets that are bad, and I think then that rolls over into the high school. If we closed it at that stage there, we wouldn't need to go this far. That's just a thought. Because I think the adjacent schools test was, the adjacent schools versus the regions was a good idea, but we tried to add other things and we never got that done.
I would like to add from the numbers. We range from 110% total system-wide capacity for our schools. To make sure I'm clear. We range from 110% to 132%. And without a capital project, there is no way you can redistrict these kids anywhere in any combination that would result in a school under 110% capacity.
You said it wasn't a capital project.
No, I'm saying if you have a capital project,
Yeah.
then these numbers change. Then these regions open. What is it, OCIP is the term that you have in the chart?
Yeah, there is a capital project for a 13th high school in the capital budget.
So,
And the range isn't 110 to 130, and there's some school, the lowest is 85.8%.
no, my range is the total.
The total capacity going out.
Oh, if you go out,
The county,
oh,
the county.
okay.
Is this the
What year is the
115%?
school, high school?
I think the earliest it can open is 26. So, I mean, it's about a $130 million project, so.
But there clearly is an issue here about the numbers. We don't have enough capacity.
Yeah, I agree with
Any other discussion? Okay, Brent, can you reread your motion?
I apologize for not being very specific in language, but the motion would be to add a high schools test using the same criteria and provisions that we've agreed to for the elementary school tests.
All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed?
Nine.
We're on 17, we have 17 now, Patty's here.
So I would like to wrap up with, is there a number that would be agreeable with this group to add the high schools test at a higher percentage level? Right now, it's 110% for elementary schools. Would 115% be something that this group could agree on for the welfare of our 19,000 high school students? And I don't agree with 115%, but I'm offering that.
Have you motion?
Can I
I
ask
guess
a,
it's like he's seeking consensus
Yeah.
or feedback.
Yeah.
when Marriott Ridge and, what was the other? No, before after Reservoir.
Very rich.
Marriott Ridge was the only one afterwards?
Yeah.
Long Reach Reservoir, Marys Ridge.
Okay, so I was on a committee and we were looking at the data. And the data was about the school capacities. And we brought it forward that there was no one watching the need for the high school. And wasn't there an emergency need to push the, and I'm looking for guidance because this is what I was told, not that I know. That they saw that they needed to push that ahead because they weren't watching it and the middle school filled up in the western part of the county faster than the elementary schools.
Well, I guess what I could offer you as a check on that is the board's policy on attendance areas requires an annual report that includes high school capacity utilization. So it's kind of hard to hide any overcrowding. And, you know, you can look at it yourself, you can see Howard is extremely overcrowded. So there's no getting around that discussion. And, you know, the latest approach was a temporary building, but, you know, that's probably the last shot at that idea. So, you know, next is gonna have to be redistricting capital project.
So if we're not gonna have a new school till 2026, I guess Brent is asking the developers, would they go to the 115 to pass this motion?
Well, he's not asking developers, he's asking people who did not vote for the motion. Some of us are not developers. Most of us are not developers.
Is there, I'm just wondering, so 2026 is in the capital budget, has there been discussions or trying a way to figure out how to get the high school built sooner? Because I know there's other priorities, there's a process, and it's a very rational process. But the question I would have is why, has there been talk about trying to get the relief of the, you know, how we have to go along?
Yeah, they adjusted on the capital budget, so, and that has a pretty real effect on some of the other things, like the addition to Elementary Mills Middle School is now later, the Hammond renovation, Hammond High School renovation is later. So they've been working pretty hard to get that high school online earlier. And on the other side, some of your colleagues here at the county government are working pretty hard to acquire sites. So,
What, do we know what region, where it would be?
well, the largest need is in the Route 1 corridor.
Well, I know where the need is, and the need was also in the east when Marriott Ridge was built, so, which didn't.
A wise observation.
It's not rocket science.
Yeah, I mean, that was built
Leave
there.
the whole west undeveloped.
Yeah.
It's gonna be at east.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's the far east, really, it's not, you know, I mean, it's.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, not quite that far. See, it's
Tried.
Although you wouldn't have to do wage rates, you know, actually it's much cheaper to build.
So, is there is there any interest in, well, yeah, you can put forth another motion. I don't
All right, in the
know.
interest of time, I will make this quick. I will propose the exact same motion, with the exception of the numbers are 115% versus 110% compared to the elementary school test.
All those in favor?
Can you repeat, I'm sorry, Keith?
It was the same motion, just
It's been said.
10 to 115.
Since we had gone down to 110 on the other agreement, he's saying we want to.
Same provision. Okay.
1, 2, 3.
We didn't second it.
Oh, I'm sorry, we have a second.
I'll second.
My colleague Joel
Sharon Lee.
said that.
Thank you, thank you.
He's my mentor.
Sharon Lee
That's
seconded.
why I went so fast.
Gotta look at your hands, or so.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
9 in favor, all those opposed?
8.
We progressed, didn't we?
One more.
500%.
Anything else on high schools?
Thank you very much. This is within my daughter's time, and we will have to dress it outside, unless we can find another provision.
Second part of that was middle school's test. Nicole, you wanted to address that?
Yes, I was going to make a motion that we eliminate the middle school test, but in the value of saving our time, that has no chance of passing, so I won't make the motion. We can just go on to the next one.
Okay. We had no one claim, number 3, exempt downtown Columbia from allocations and schools tests. So
I
we're
think
gonna.
that was yours. No, seriously, I mean, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't put it on, I don't recall ever putting it on your APFO list. I'm sure it came, I put it on the list, I'm sure it came up in discussion at some
Yes.
point. I never put it on the list though, I know it's on the list and I know we are addressing it as it relates to downtown Columbia, so.
Does anybody want to support that?
Well, I'll say something about this, just to, there is a CEPA system for downtown Columbia, and I'm hoping that a school will come out of that. So, then, having an additional APFO test on them might be counterintuitive to squeezing as much out of that CEPA or the subsequent agreements that come with their present proposal. But it's just an observation.
And somebody from Howard Hughes mentioned to me that they, as the SEPA, they have to donate an elementary school site, I think, isn't that what their requirement is?
Yeah.
And so their feeling is that's their equivalent of APFO written into their SEPA, so that's why.
And,
Well, more than happy to-
Then they have no problem passing the test.
and early on, I don't know if you all remember, we did pass a motion to exempt downtown Columbia from the provision of the 300-unit cap.
Yes.
That relates
Oh,
to-
yes.
Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah, based on the SEPA. So to me, this is a similar follow-through. And, Carl mentioned as part of the housing recommendation, as part for the affordable housing that's moving forward with Columbia, one of the recommendations is going to be to exempt downtown Columbia as long as we're assured that funding is in place to pay for the new school that's necessarily attached to that SEPA that Joel mentioned.
That's kind of where I would.
Right, so I think it's logical to exempt them because they have this SEPA requirement, and it would be helpful for the APFO committee to acknowledge that, to tie it to the legislation that's moving forward with the housing recommendation.
If I could, sorry, just pile on one more thing, and I'll be quick. You brought up the capital budget earlier, Brent, and the reason why I really like something like that coming out of the Columbia project is that the present capital budget process already has 3 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school. And so if there's a way we can get someone to claim one of those elementary schools, it makes it a little easier to get the other trains down the main line. So, it's only a pragmatic argument.
Well, the real, I guess the reason that this makes sense in relation to all that, is if I understand it, is that, so if you don't exempt it, you get the school, and capacity's still, or there's a capacity problem still, so they can't go forward with downtown Columbia development, or we never get the school because they can't go forward because there's a capacity problem, so we don't get any of that, I guess is.
Right, and it's really a time, it's a lot of timing issue. It's like giving the developer downtown Columbia the flexibility to move forward. And I would add,
Based on the promise or the.
well, based on the requirement, because it's a SEPA, so that, it's almost like they have their own built-in APFO in the downtown plan. They have this list of SEPAs that was approved in 2010 when the downtown plan was adopted. I would not exempt them from allocations, just the schools test. Allocations are part of the general plan, and currently they're required to have allocations, and so I would continue to have that.
The timing of
And they kind of do have it set up where they have allocations, but essentially they can borrow from the future. So it's kind of a non-issue, quite frankly, but there's no need to exempt them from allocations. And there is an allocations chart with the downtown Columbia listing of allocations, so it doesn't make sense to exempt them. And that's in the general plan, so it doesn't make sense to exempt them from allocations.
I have a question for Joel, I guess. If there's not enough school seats in downtown Columbia and they spill over to the other schools, wouldn't it negatively affect the surrounding schools if the board decides to redistrict, which we know they don't do all the time, but But so wouldn't that have effects outside of Columbia as well?
Yeah, in theory, yeah, if you redistricted it, you know, downtown Columbia, say Running Brook attending area, you redistricted it to, so that, such that you maybe even got into the Centennial Lane Elementary School District or something like that, yeah, you could have an impact.
I guess I don't see why we would exempt it.
Well, he had said it was tied to the provision of this funding for the school, so.
Only if they build it.
that was-
Well, then they should have enough capacity, right?
That's the theory.
If they do, they do.
Lisa?
I don't think keeping our APFO test is going to mess up that deal and make that school not happen. You know, they know that it's needed, they know how much density is going down there to make it work. And I think that we need to keep the schools test and allocations test going forward so that it's a future thing that protects them in an ongoing way.
So we don't have anybody, oh, I'm sorry, Stu, you want to say?
It's okay. I think it's illogical to exempt anything related to downtown Columbia. I'm glad that you said that you don't think the units allocation should be exempt.
Right.
So my question would be, you know, Howard Hughes is asking for an additional 1,060 units. And they're supposed to have 5,500. So how would all that play into this?
That's part of it. So they've changed it to 900, additional 900 affordable housing units. The other rationale for exemption is that if this joint housing recommendation as approved, or as put forward by the downtown housing group and the housing commission, as it moves forward, if it gets approved, one of the reasons why the exemption is important is that if it's not, then again, it's related to the timing. It could be that the timing of some of these affordable units wouldn't be able to get that either.
Jeff, I don't understand. Why should they be exempt?
Because they're gonna dedicate a site for school, number one, as part of CEPA. And number two, they're gonna be able, we've insured through a fiscal impact study as part of a potential TIF funding, that money will be, enough money will be set aside to fund the cost of capital construction of the schools. So we're gonna ensure that there's enough money, and plus it'll be in the capital budget. So we know that, well, we wouldn't do this if it would create a school capacity problem. But if we ensure that a school will be there before the development comes
Well,
on.
why shouldn't it be part of APFO itself?
Was that?
Why shouldn't it be part of APFO itself? I know there's secrets and all this other stuff. I just don't understand. I mean, we have a base, a foundation called APFO. Why should anybody be exempt from it?
I guess because the downtown plan is unique, and it's got its own kind of.
You and I disagree with that, but that's okay.
I would have to say, there are some protections. You have OCIPs, so we account. And you also have redistricting going on, so you may account for that in redistricting. And again, these are just caps that only last for so many years, of which there is appropriate staging of Columbia. It should be appropriate staging of Columbia. So the burden on this is really on the planners to work within the constraints that we've laid out. Without a very detailed analysis, we won't know if this is about.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
Doesn't sound like
That's only one last comment. It's not about disallowing the plan to go forward in Columbia. It's about pacing it for the future with infrastructure. And we did amend the allocations limit with the 300 so that we wouldn't be putting too much of an onus on the current plan already. So I think doing this would be too much.
So no motion, so we'll move on. And the next one, Lisa had addressed it and said she would withdraw, or
I'm
she
gonna
would make a
let
motion.
Brent take care of it because he did some research for me while I was sick.
Oh, who-
And Brent
Okay.
has got some
But
good ideas.
Let me just finish. So the number 15 and number 17, I think, are related, so why don't we take those together? And we've got Brent on 15 and Cole on 17.
Well, on 17, I didn't have a motion. All I was pointing out is that I did that calculation a couple meetings
Oh,
ago.
okay, yeah.
What the fiscal impact of schools.
Right, oh, yeah, Brent, you had 17 also, right?
They tie together, I agree.
Yeah,
They're-
okay, so
they're
why don't you go?
similar.
Do it at the
So
same time.
this is a controversial topic, but it's something that deserves review by the by this group. And that is the concept of impact fees. This is described as nexus requirements for impact fees, which is absolutely accurate. By the Supreme Court rule, you cannot charge a fee for growth unless there's a rational nexus. And therefore, this committee, APFO, the county cannot ask developers doing growth to contribute more than what their fair share is. Their fair share being the cost of the impact to the public facilities and community. So I want to lay this out at the highest level. This is asking or setting a bar that in no circumstances are we asking for growth projects to pay for more than their per unit costs, fair costs. It's unpopular, but that's the threshold. Contribute what the impact is. Now, it's up to us to determine what the impact is for various things. And that needs to be, by a Supreme Court, rational. It can't be unreasonable requests. So the motion I'm going to propose is to propose a replacement of excise tax for services requiring mitigation in APFO. The impact fee will be reviewed yearly and indexed and not to exceed the actual cost of per unit service where a rational nexus exists. So the concept here is, this isn't a fee on top of a fee. This is replacing an excise tax with an impact fee. This is reviewing it regularly for cost adjustments so it's fair and adjusts with the market and down with the market if the market goes down, or if the services and adequate infrastructure are already in place. Not to exceed the per unit cost, i.e. we aren't charging unfair amounts per seat, per unit of traffic, whatever topic we are measuring. And where a rational nexus exists, literally spelling it out that we are intending to abide by the law and within the law. Now, some of this is being discussed right now in the Spending Affordability Committee that's going on in parallel with this. There are a lot of pros and cons for charging services on a broad base. There are pros and cons for charging impact fees based on true costs. I am proposing this, in my personal opinion, that because we have fallen behind, that we should work toward a funding mechanism that pays true cost for services in Howard County. Nothing more, nothing less. And I believe that will remove a lot of our conflict with the development community. It won't solve our problems. Where we have shortcomings, the community has to bring up their own, fix their own shortcomings within their means. It's not the development's community's responsibility to fix past shortcomings. But it would be within their responsibility to fund the impacts they have to our community. I see a lot of red faces. I understand this will be picked apart, but I'm proposing this because I feel it is very important, and I think it can solve many of our problems, such as our high school capital problems, and many other problems that we have in this county. And I'm leaving it broad-based to the topics that we've covered in this. If we add additional services, then they would obviously be factored in. Is anyone second?
I have a question. Are you talking about just for schools?
I'm saying per service costs for items that require mitigation and APFO. Right now, it's what we have decided on. If at the end of this session, we decide on 27 new items, that would be applicable.
So Brent,
I were a developer of building, why would I vote for that proposal?
I would be very concerned because it may be additional costs if I had been paying less over time. And I would be very ecstatic if I was paying my fair share over time, because it would allow me to proceed with projects without delay. And you could work within the market. Obviously, our allocations tests still apply, but within that constraint, we could have a sustainable economic model for Howard County. And like I said, if the infrastructure exists, if the costs of the infrastructure are going down, if we're achieving efficiencies, all these people going around helping the various systems, the school system, parks, to operate at their maximum efficiency, these costs should go down. It's a fair cost. It's not an unfair cost. It's literally a fair cost.
So what amount are we talking about?
So, it's based on the capital cost that Joel gave me that and then applying the yield for different school types and housing types, it would be about $24,000. This is just a school portion now. It would be $24,000 for single-family detached, $11,000 for a townhouse, and $6,600 for an apartment, just for school.
And the reality is, that charge is being passed to county residents regardless, one way or the other.
What about the new developer's perspective versus the existing pipeline of approved units? Doesn't that put the new developer at a disadvantage against somebody who already has approved units? Is there a way to address that?
I do not know. I'm open to suggestion. That's a very fair question. However, anything we do in this committee has grandfathering clauses, and it will take years till we see the results of some of the things we motion and get approved. And even if high school, middle school, whatever tests, it's going to be a while till we see it. So yeah, some people are going to have advantages for having things in the pipeline.
I just want to make sure everybody understands the difference between an impact fee and an excise tax. One of the reasons that tax was the way we went initially in APFO was a tax can be used countywide. So the thought was the county could take, like the building excise tax, which was primarily for roads, since the developer already had to mitigate its own traffic, that excise tax could be used to fix systemic problems in the county's road infrastructure. An impact fee has to be spent in the impacted area where that development occurs. A tax could be countywide, but a fee has to be part of the nexus. Is not just cost-wise, but it has to be in that area. So if it's spent on roads, it has to be roads that are within the impact area of that project. If it's on schools, it has to be spent on schools in that impact area. So if you're paying an impact fee to build a house where the capacity is at 80%, you can't spend it in a district, on the other side of the county where it's 120%. Whereas a tax, you can. So
would that limit our ability to catch up where we're already behind?
We wind up with a lot of little pots of money all over the town, not ending up
We
doing
would be
the
falling
thing.
farther behind, but we still have got to figure out how to fix the gap we already
it
have.
would probably help in some areas, and in some areas you wouldn't really be able to use it.
I thought I heard Brent, though, you say that this would replace existing fees. Am I wrong?
But not all fees, the excise tax component, which is, for all practical purposes, a variation of an impact fee.
Except that it.
Without the local.
But it can go system-wide,
And
whereas the impact fee can't.
It will pose challenges. However, having the money local also frees up the general fund to achieve the thing on the other side of the county as well.
No, because that comes from bonding, not from general. That's the problem I have with it. It's a creative way of thinking, but it results in 30 or 40 little pots of $1 million here, $2 million there. And you can't, Joe, if I gave you $2 million today for a school, what would that do?
Planning.
Karen?
But it isn't necessarily a bad thing, you can match.
I'm not saying it's bad, I'm saying it doesn't get us there. It doesn't give me the open gate, it doesn't create an improved capital project. It makes me subject to allocations, subject to closed schools, and subject to roads, and pay twice my fee. I get nothing.
And on roads, you may be counterproductive because your developer's already mitigating their traffic and paying the tax. If you did this, the mitigation would, if you're only paying the fee, you wouldn't have to mitigate your traffic because the fee is to do that.
And other votes that we've had around a subject like this, all of you have heard me say, if I could pay my way out of it, I would. But this has me paying, but not getting out of it. Thanks.
Karen?
I appreciate that Cole had the chart and quantified the cost. How does that compare to the current excise tax? So you've got almost 24,000 for single-family detached, 11,000
It's
for
about
town.
12 for an existing single-family detached home, 12,000.
12,000, so half the cost.
And that's payable in a lump sum at settlement currently, so it's not spread out at all.
And that's the school excise tax or the,
Is that school and road?
That's school and road. That's school and road.
So-
What about the MIHU tax, which is huge?
Yes, $2.
Well, if you put that on top, but I
That's up to
didn't add it.
20-something.
I just said that was, that's for, we can't use it for schools or roads.
Here's a
Impact
breakdown.
fees.
It is.
So,
Well, in
so
that
the
case,
24,000 for single family that's detached in this impact fee, that's just for the schools piece in this chart? So there'd be more for roads and any other measures?
Right, whatever.
So, I mean, this could seriously deter anybody from even being able to afford a property, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just trying to figure out, am I missing something?
I will have to
Because
say,
this seems
yes.
high.
How-
Okay.
However, this charge is being passed to that homeowner one way or the other, be it in a
Right.
30-year bond or an upfront cost. Tischler Base, ICE, hopefully I pronounced it right. You know, they do most of the impact fee studies for our region. I got here, Anne Arundel, Calvert, Carroll, Charles, Easton, Frederick, Hampstead, Ocean City, Salisbury, Talbot County, Westminster, Worcester, Brunswick. It's a long list. About 1/2 of Maryland is going off these guys' recommendations for impact fees. This is being done in a lot of counties and surrounding jurisdictions. And keep in mind, to specifically address your concern, how do we catch up? It is not fair to charge development and growth catch-up fees. All we can ask is what their true impact is by law, or they will sue us. And we will have more fees. But we should capture exactly the most we can within the law so that we have a sustainable system, so our problems do not get worse. This doesn't solve our prior problems. This keeps them from getting worse.
Do the other counties have similar dollar values?
There are some very high dollar values, and I think we've discussed that on a chart earlier in these sessions for.
And a lot of those are smaller areas. Ocean City probably has one high school, Talbot County maybe has 2 high schools.
It's a per person.
But
It's a
it's,
per
but,
unit.
but your unit, your area where you can spend that money is, it's not great, it's more concentrated. I mean, you know if you're gonna charge an impact fee in Ocean City, it's gonna be spent in Ocean City. If you're gonna charge an impact fee in Elbert, or, well, in West Friendship, and they don't need anything, it can't be spent at all. It can't be spent in Elbert.
That is a con to this, but I believe the pro of capturing our expenses outweighs that con of having to manage the income.
Everybody, Diane?
Well, if it's costing us 24,000 and development is putting in 12,000, then every time every house is built, we're going into the red 12,000.
Not
So-
true.
That's if you're building a new school.
No, you have to take the tax that that house is gonna pay for the next 30 years and capitalize it and say, how much is that doing? I mean, the guys that we built houses for 15 years ago have no more kids in the school, maybe, but, you know, assuming all houses bring little kids, but they're still paying their,
Well,
they're
yeah.
still paying their income taxes.
I understand that.
And 55 or
Jeff will
60%
tell you
of it.
that.
I understand that, but everybody's paying their income taxes and we have this big gap where we're
So
not
do all the
keeping
other
up.
counties, every
So,
other county has the
I
same
understand,
standard.
so I'm just
So
trying
it doesn't
to,
matter what the fee is.
okay, so my question is, we started out with 24,000 is what we need, we're only getting 12. The other 12 is coming out of the taxpayer's pocket, but we're also dealing with this big backlog that we have too, and trying to find ways to pay for that too. So this is kind of how I'm trying to understand, and I understand what Brenda's saying, he wants the upfront cost, that's what the house is gonna cost, it should come from the development. So that's where we're at.
And taxes pay for operating costs. You need to replace a new air conditioner system, that's coming out of our transfer fees, which hopefully can decline.
So it
And
doesn't come
our,
out,
our day-to-day taxes.
so it doesn't come out of the
Lisa?
developer's building, it comes out of our tax dollars.
The chart that we had a while back that had a bunch of impact fees for all the other counties, we discussed this once before, that I was noticing, pardon my voice, that a lot of other counties had a lot higher fees than we do. What did you mean, Diane, when you said that it's costing us 24, but we're getting 12? How are we getting 12?
Well, Brent is asking for what it actually costs us,
Right.
that's what his
That's
motion
the
is.
24 number.
Right, that's the
It's
24.
the excise taxes.
24 to
Okay.
6.
And currently, we're getting about 12.
Excise
That's
taxes.
what I'm saying,
Is what they
like,
said.
how are we getting 12? That's what I'm
It's
saying.
on the
And
excise
excise
taxes that we pay at
That's,
building.
that's what they pay.
At the creation of the residential unit.
That's what they're currently paying.
And then Steve added that the tax base is expanded by that
What,
residential
6,000
unit.
square foot house?
There's an income tax and there's
It's
a
gross
property
square
tax.
footage.
It's gross,
Yeah.
that includes the basement, the garage.
So-
But you're saying that the other counties
No, I
have
just-
higher
That
percentages
number, I
to
was
get
just
there.
wondering where that came from. On a 6,000 square foot house, that makes sense.
Five-
But the,
5,000.
it wouldn't make sense for.
Well, we're doing
other
some
units.
townhouses
I
right now with
understand.
Bruce actually, and for a townhouse, it's gonna be, a villa, it's gonna be $7,800 per unit.
For the road and schools combined.
Because when you look at the chart for the other counties, I
I'm
mean,
sorry, that's the
They're pretty
MIG
high.
figure, that's
Sorry
our,
about the MIG.
that's MIG.
Montgomery's like
And
39,000.
let's look at
Alright,
one,
speak up.
one of the current flaws with our excise tax. It's based on square footage. How do you know, based on the square footage of a townhome or a McMansion in Fulton, that you're gonna generate enough income overall for a per unit increase in growth? And, you know, there may be chances where we average it all out and it comes out. But for all practical purposes, the market changes, the rates change, labor rates change, all these values are constantly in flux, and we are hoping to capture it by guessing the right amount of square footage on new construction versus charging the true costs. And ideally, you know, if the development community's been overpaying all these years, they got an opportunity to knock it down. And if they haven't, well, this is the time to get to the break-even point.
We've gone about 20 minutes on this, we were trying to keep discussion, so I know we're talking two topics here, but any other questions before we take a vote?
Just a quick one. How would this mesh with the resolution that was passed, I think, December 16th, where we talked about the double, triple facility surcharge? Because we've already captured significant dollars there, if that moves
Oh,
forward.
I did the math on that one, and we're capturing less than true unit costs.
Okay. But is that taken into consideration?
I took all these things into consideration. There were some benefits,
Mhm.
but the cons outweighed the benefits from my point of view, where I'm trying to ensure adequate facilities for schools. You are dead on though. We have negotiated some get out of jail free things.
Mhm.
That would have to be, if this passed, we would have to address those.
Right.
Because logistically.
Because
speaking,
logistically, it
conflicts.
wouldn't be fair to double charge
Okay.
if they're paying their true cost.
Well, Brent, isn't your proposal that if you paid what you're saying, you would just go forward? I mean, you wouldn't take any test, you would just pay that fee? Isn't that what
With the
it's an
exception
allocation?
of allocations.
Yes, right. But there'd be no capacity test because you're paying your full.
There would be a rough period, but quite honestly, it would take many years for this to get through the queue. And hopefully, the true costs could generate the income.
So that's your answer to his question originally, is what I would have developed or looked for, is that they don't have any, again, rid of it.
So you're
Well,
saying,
that's a huge
Down the
incentive.
road.
so you're keeping the allocations test, but it would, if the impact fee were attached, it would exempt the school's tax.
I'm not going there yet. Let's get past square one.
You better read it.
Let's get past square
Can you
one.
read that?
But that is, that would be the next logical step for us to
Can you-
discuss.
Read your motion again
Oh.
before we vote.
Oh, I'm getting dizzy from this. Hopefully you see the benefits of it. Propose a replacement of excise tax for services requiring mitigation in APFO. An impact fee will be reviewed yearly and indexed not to exceed the actual cost of per unit of service where a rational nexus exists.
Did you send this to us?
No.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so he reread the motion. All those in favor, raise your hand. Sorry.
1, 2, 3.
All those opposed?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 3,
And
13.
Did we have abstentions?
I don't like.
One abstention.
Are you abstaining or not?
No, I think that.
313.
To
I
1.
don't feel like I want to renege on the other. But that's a huge, this is
Which one?
And,
He's quick on the switch.
I guess we don't have any suggestions of a compromise here from the folks who voted against it.
Pretty close.
Can I do one additional motion, which would
well,
be
that's what we did.
recommend.
Hold on, he's making another motion.
Have the task force recommend to our spending affordability committee that they review the pros and cons of impact fees versus excise taxes.
Without any guidance as to the calculation of the impact
They're
fees?
victorious, they should be able
Do we have a second
I
to
second
that?
that.
Okay. The motion is to recommend that our spending affordability committee look at impact fees versus excise taxes with regards to what we talked about here. New development.
Evaluation tax.
Just versus. not
Pros and cons of each.
Pros and cons of each, yeah, to look at both. Okay, any other question, discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor?
Raise your hand,
Raise your hand, you were paying attention, that's how we're doing it.
It's so they'll look at it.
Okay, yes. Okay.
Opposed?
Oh,
You guys are
sorry.
opposed, the end in favor?
These are now.
4, and I'm missing a voter.
Any abstentions? Okay, who didn't vote? Okay, all those in favor?
1, 2.
Hands high.
13.
Okay. So that still doesn't pass. Any particular reasons why people voted against it? The previous one, did we have reasons for that not passing? Mine just
Oh.
be what I said, you're gonna have pots of money that can't address the problems, you know, somebody buys a house out in western Howard County where there is no school issue, and they can't help Elbridge.
I think it has value, but there's certain things that aren't coming together for the problems that we're still dealing with. I don't know.
Yeah, to me, that's just not the right one. Okay, next is number 16, which is also Brent, add traffic safety test.
No, that was.
I'm sorry.
That was Abby.
Abby had initially
Oh, she's the one who was in.
said she was going to propose something, she's not here present, so I offered in her absence to do one.
She, I think, did say she's coming late if we want to wait until, did she send an email saying she was?
There's Christine.
That
Abby's
was-
oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
If you want to wait, or we can just take it now.
Would you like punch card?
We can go through this real quick. I get the feeling I know which way it will go. This, respect, this does need to be addressed, which is add a traffic safety test. Traffic safety test is not a normal test in APFO. It's uncommon compared to other ones, but it's a logical component of traffic. It does fly a little bit in the face of our traffic engineers because by design, when they're designing mitigation to road improvements, they should be ensuring traffic. What I'm proposing, I'll do the rough version,
Carl,
is
he was asking for his notes back.
Oh, I apologize, Brian.
Still try to type.
Typing, sorry.
To make it quick, add a measurable metric of accidents per vehicle movement per year to the traffic test, and provide a bonding for improvements to maintain that level of service for a period of 3 years. The time period, I'm negotiable on. The goal is that as traffic projects come in, assure that if accident rates per person, to be fair, per person increase, then we have some source for additional mitigation because traffic safety is a concern.
How do you mean per person? How do you apply that?
Or per vehicle unit.
Per vehicle through that movement through that intersection?
Through your tested intersections.
So they post a bond or something?
Post a bond.
Okay.
So
Just
if
so
it
people understand.
increases, not if it just stays as bad as it was.
And this is per unit, so, you know, obviously, as growth occurs, you're going to have more traffic. But the rate of accidents should not be increasing as that occurs. It essentially is a safety that our roads tests are actually performing the safety component as well as the capacity component.
And after a period of time.
It's
they know
unfair
that.
to test them forever.
Yeah.
How do you
So-
figure I don't understand how you figure the cost. If you have a couple more accidents, what's the cost of those accidents?
Well, ideally, you know, traffic studies mitigate traffic to a particular level of service.
No, they only say whether there needs to be an improvement. They don't decide what the improvement is.
You decide that.
Well, when you're handed that result, let's say you have intersection A at B, and it needs to be mitigated, then you're told, you design it, you propose it, we'll review it, and if we agree with you, then you may build it.
Well, this is all the better because a well-designed intersection should be increasing per rate of accidents per year.
So that gets to
But
the
in our,
question, what is it?
but in the design, don't we use background, an increase in background?
Yeah.
Every 3% every year, 6%, whatever that
Yeah.
increase is? So there's always.
I'm willing to work with you.
Right, but I'm saying that's already in.
That is a
there.
valid point,
Yeah,
and you could factor that.
yeah, I
into
mean,
this
what I'm
motion
saying,
if
that
is the
3% or
order.
6% or whatever is already factored into the increase, and what's in the pipeline is already.
And my little 10-unit subdivision is gonna contribute 80 cars per day through that intersection. So do I have to pay for the design and review and approval of the intersection improvements? Because that alone is gonna cost me.
Well, here's the thing. Over the course of a unit of time, 2 to 3 years, are the accidents going to get exponentially worse?
I think that's why we have the experts in traffic engineering to determine that.
I'm doing this in spirit for Abby. I think it's not unreasonable that accident rates shouldn't increase over time. And the bonding doesn't have to be to infinity, it can be to a reasonable level.
Excuse me, one other thought. Remember too, that what Champ told us is that not all accidents are the same as accidents. Some, like Diane, that's a serious real accident. But those little rear enders, when you're not paying attention and you bump the car in front of you, not an accident.
Having been through several of those in my life, I consider them accidents.
But they don't.
Fair enough.
Diane,
I understand what you're saying, and I understand why you're saying it, because again, we go back to 103. 103 put up all those senior housing, whatever it was, they weren't supposed to be driving, and That was already a nasty intersection, now it is just absolutely horrendous, and they are all T-bones there. They're all T-bones.
Yeah, those are real accidents.
And we did take another development that was supposed to have 45 townhouses and doubled it to 90 in this already failed thing. So if there was just a test of something, I don't know, but this is like afterwards. I can see where it would have happened. I just don't understand how this happened before, that slipped through or whatever, but it's a nightmare. It is just a nightmare there. They are all bad accidents, and they're nasty injury accidents, and we are continuing to build on something that may be about 10 years down the road.
Let me ask you a question now. I'm trying to relate what you're saying to APFO, the building permit process, allocations or something. The accidents aren't going to increase until after the development has already been put in.
So the bond is
But
put in
if you
and then
post
you
a
can use it.
bond, then that bond.
In case they,
But the
Yeah.
property
Yeah.
doesn't
Yes.
get more mitigation.
Okay,
then.
so
Yeah,
then you would have money to mitigate instead of waiting on the county or the state.
But what that leads, bonds are an instrument with an insurance company, so
Right.
you have to be able to prove that something went wrong. So
Right.
you said that failure would be an accident, and my only thought now is that accident, the occurrence of an accident versus not occurring doesn't necessarily measure the level of risk. It could just be a fluke that the accident didn't happen. The risk could be higher, so is there any other way possibly to say, but I don't think there is.
I'm not trying to overly complicate this.
I was.
We can go into, the short version is how do we solve the problem?
Yeah, because when the traffic people were here, they said that we do run these traffic scenarios and we keep track of them. So if we're keeping track of them, when we see it is making a huge mess, we take the bond and go do something about it.
Yeah, it's like,
Instead of leaving it sit like we're doing now, so.
like the tree dies, you're supposed to plant 20 trees, they die, the bond pays
Yeah,
to redo it.
yeah,
That's something in the same effect.
But we bond work, not risk,
yeah,
Okay,
you know?
yeah.
you bond that it'll get done.
probability of something bad
So
happening.
That's a financial guarantee,
How
basically.
do you bond
Right,
against?
it's very, it's the worst kind of.
That's what I was trying,
Yeah, okay. But I see your point, I was good.
Real quick.
Yes,
I don't understand how you would, it's hard to read from me, but I don't understand how you would actually measure that. In the case of Paul, he's got, what, 10 years, you
Yeah,
said?
got 10 years.
So hypothetically, does that mean that 2 years after he builds, that if a person has an accident, and a minor accident, or even a major accident, what is the criteria for that?
Well, what I said clearly was a rate higher than current, maintain. You can build your project in a horrible intersection, just keep it at horrible. Don't make it worse than worse.
Horrible.
And really, this goes back to a rational
That's true, we
nexus.
do have that.
You cannot charge
We do
development
have that.
for things that they are not, for impact they are not generating. So the intent here is just
there she is.
to generate.
We're discussing your
Bond
motion.
would-
Just in time, because we have questions.
Make it
Sit down and explain.
Brent has been valiantly defending your proposal.
For traffic safety.
Okay, can we move, do you want to move to something else and let her catch up, or we're-
Abby needs enough, frankly.
jump right in? But it's not what Abby talked about, okay. Let's be willing to, we're all ready to vote, and you're not here.
Brent reread it, and we can
Brent?
vote on that, and then if Abby has something different she wants to propose, let's.
Okay, let's do that. Brett, reread it.
All right. This is in regards to the traffic safety test. Add a measurable metric of accidents per vehicle movement per year, or the equivalent, to provide a consistent level of safety standards for intersection, or intersections as tested in the roads test of APFO for a particular project. Projects shall be bonded for improvements to be made for safety and tested over a period of 3 years.
Who seconded it? Well, it was, I don't remember before, but whatever. Okay, Diane seconded. Okay, so all those in favor of the motion, raise your hand.
Three.
Opposed? abstentions?
One, 13-1, I'm missing someone.
Somebody
Abstaining
didn't.
from your own motion.
Just for the crowd, there's a lot of people
That's not
talking. Does anybody have a solution for this? This is regards to our public safety forces.
Oh, did Karen, did
Oh, I
you?
probably missed her. I probably missed Karen. Which way did you go, Karen? Down?
I have a question, Diane Mikulis. What triggers the bond? What triggers the bond?
It would have to be a regular review, most likely yearly, or at the end of a performance period. It's every project would have a bond.
Well, if it's a performance bond, why don't you just go back to the original metrics that are in the traffic study, volume, turn movements? And if it fails those performance, you get to collect the bond.
He's talking about accident.
But they don't
Those are harder
include
to
accident rate.
Right.
And that's the problem. You
You'd have
can
to
have
measure.
high capacity, but no test per
So
se.
how do you know that accident came from that particular development?
don't.
That's the
Yeah.
hard part.
You
It
don't have any
doesn't.
idea.
It's an imperfect world, but that's the most rational metric you can get out of this facility.
Okay, unless we have another motion on that.
And Kathy, did you have anything else?
Okay. Number 18, Sharon Lee, New Metric Transit, and this is somewhat duplicative of what you got in your folder, but this is a compilation of the motions, and it has Abby's at the top, Sharon Lee's at the top.
Until the robots take over.
Yes.
The requirements, or lack thereof, have been very lax, and so you can't get around in Howard County unless you have a car, period. And we need to do something about it to stop this. And we've got to connect things when there's either a new development or infill. There has to be a plan in place that will connect that development to nearby, to a drugstore, to jobs. And what transit plans include is a bus route, bus stops, access sidewalks, and those should be included in the plans for any development or redevelopment before the final approval is given for it. And that's what the motion says. Transportation-specific plans between a project and neighboring retail/commercial services, either existing or planned, and/or immediate employment centers. And then it specifically says what those pieces are, must be included in any new development or redevelopment before final approval is given, and any place before the development or redevelopment is permitted to operate, including downtown Columbia.
Okay, do we have a second? Oh, I'm sorry, who's that? Right, okay. Discussion,
Yeah.
questions?
So, we discussed this before, I believe, to a certain extent. The question became, what about developments in western Howard County? How would that work?
I don't think it applies to western Howard County. They don't have enough density to
So do you want to?
exclude western Howard County.
Okay. You want to
Thank
include that in one?
One question we had before on this was defining how close by the nearby areas were supposed to
Within
be.
half a mile, I think is reasonable. Within half a mile.
Within half a mile, okay.
Suppose the right of way doesn't exist.
Then I think the county has to figure out how to get it done. I don't think the developer has to figure it out. It's not up to the developer to figure it out, it's the county.
Anything else?
Well, the only thing, is it necessary to define what a project is? Is that one house?
One think would probably be a minimum of 3 houses.
Okay, want to add that?
Yep.
And how would it apply to commercial development?
I think it applies to commercial, especially, because how those people can get to work. Not everyone has a car.
But no, but if you're developing a commercial project, are you building transit to an adjacent commercial project or to a neighborhood, or, I mean, what's the commercial project do to satisfy this, or does it even take this test?
I can't really answer that, because the projects that I'm thinking about are along US 1, Route 40, in major thoroughfares. What are you asking about that would preclude having transportation there, to get the employees there?
No, what I'm asking is you just define a project as 3 houses or more, so you're saying,
Okay,
just from a
I see.
residential area
Okay.
to a neighboring retail or employment
Right.
center, but if you're building the retail or employment center, you take this test, or do you have to build or transport
Yes.
to the nearest neighborhood or to the nearest other
Yes.
employment center, or what?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there a need to define where the parcel resides on a state road versus a county road?
No, no.
Because they were talking about issues of having the ownership of the area that needs to be redeveloped to provide the connectivity being an issue when it's a state.
Well, I don't think there's that much difference from the transportation for if it's the state or the county, because both of them should be doing this.
Right.
I think sometimes the state's more guilty of not doing it than the county is. Whoops. That's okay.
I really like this. I like the fact that it doesn't just say sidewalks.
I'm
It's
a
just
gentleman.
giving access to the next possible way to not have to use your own vehicle. And so I really like the fact that it's just to the nearest bus route, access and sidewalk. And so it could be sidewalk just to be able to get to a bus stop. And so I think that you worked this out really nicely compared to, and addressing the questions that were here.
Any other questions, comments? You reread it with those changes.
I will attempt to, so if I miss something, let me know. Okay.
Okay.
Transportation-specific plans between a project for a minimum of 3 houses and neighboring retail commercial services, either existing or planned, and/or immediate employment centers, and then the things in brackets stay the same, must be included in any new development or redevelopment before final approval is given and in place before the development/redevelopment is permitted to operate, including downtown Columbia, and these would be within a half mile, and it excludes Western Howard County specifically.
There's one thing I saw that was missing there.
Yes.
You said a minimum of 3 houses and
Yes.
commercial.
And commercial.
Is that a half mile in both directions, Sharon? Like,
I would just suggest
Quarter mile in each direction.
I would think so, that it's within both.
so a total.
Be a
of
radius,
mile.
really, right, any direction, right?
It's all miles.
That's true.
Well, it could be, depending on how many roads there are out, it could be, you know,
2 miles.
a whole bunch of half miles segments.
So the obvious question becomes, who pays for this? County, the developer?
I think it depends on what it is. I know that sounds like a naive question,
No, it's
but
not
it isn't naive, because in some cases, it would obviously be the developer. In other cases, it's going to be the county, and in other cases, it's going to be half and half, and the county and the developer have to negotiate it. I'm not trying to say who pays for it. I
was trying to get your bill passed. your
Thank
motion
you.
passed.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll try.
All those in favor of the motion
Well, let me just be clear. Just right now, the developers, builders, what part of the sidewalks do you pay today?
We pay for everything internal to the project, and then up to 250 feet east or west for both along our frontage on a public road.
So along your frontage and 250 feet beyond our frontage.
And beyond the frontage.
So with this particular motion, how do you think it would affect you if it were passed?
I think Paul's 10-lot subdivision wouldn't start. He wouldn't have any chance of building anywhere near this kind of sidewalk. It's incredibly expensive. And the county will make us pay for it because the county's not gonna pay for it. I mean, that's the way it works.
I'd be looking at 4,500 feet of sidewalk addition.
But where you are, do you normally connect with other sidewalks that are existing though?
Beg pardon?
I mean, you do a lot of development near the Route 1 area, right?
No.
Okay, then no.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no other sidewalks that you normally connect to, you're really the only person
If they're
who's
within a
trying to-
250 feet of your of where you extend it to, yes, you connect them. But there could be two vacant lots, in between them.
The most frequent experience is exactly that.
Right.
That you get this gap tooth
Right.
thing. You got a couple of feet of sidewalk here, big long break.
Right.
200 feet of sidewalk there, big long break.
That's.
So you could be building sidewalk on someone else's property that would be developed in the future.
Well, on the public road right away.
Yeah, but I mean, that would access,
Yeah.
there's a 30-acre parcel between you and the store.
Or someone that already developed that didn't have to do it because regulation
Didn't do
did
it,
it, and they get the benefit for it, and
Yeah.
you do it.
So,
Lisa?
I have a logistical question about the motion. When we add a new metric, typically we're saying that something is a measurement that is precluding or halting development in some way until it meets a certain standard or test, and possibly pay something to mitigate or get out of the mitigation or whatever. But this seems to be written saying that you're calling for like a report or a study to identify
It's a plan.
things. But planning, meaning plan this and then you can develop, or plan this and figure out who's gonna pay for it and then you can develop. I'm not understanding what the definition of this new metric is with those details. Are we saying that something is precluded from progressing until something happens specifically?
Well, I think it says you have to put it within the plan, and then to actually for the plan, before the final approval is given, for it to open, it has to be, whatever was agreed with the county, has to have been built before it's allowed to operate.
Now, do you have a specific, do you feel that it has to be an APFO, or could it just become part of the regulation?
But what is the actual regulation?
Well, the APFO is a series of tests that, it could be in the code that something like that has to happen, or within the planning stage.
Well,
Which
it
would you
doesn't
call it?
happen in the planning stage, I can tell you that right now. It doesn't happen at all. And what you always hear when you are trying to get it to happen is, well, it's going to be, it's not an APFO, so we're not required to do it.
Well, what you really hear is it's not in the subdivision regulations, so we're not required.
Okay, so it's not in both, so start by putting it in one of them, and then get it put into the other one. But if you're always saying, well, it's not in this one, put it in this one, where do you start?
We start by getting the county government to meet its public needs and start building sidewalks.
Well, that's adequate public facilities.
No, that's the county government providing public services.
It's the gap issue, right?
Yes.
The gap, that's the
Right.
one.
Okay, but how do we address the gap?
It's a good, we think it's been a long problem for a long time. I mean, the transportation TED plan,
I'll say that's.
that's the mechanisms for it.
Isn't there gonna be
But
any
it's always the issue of the funding, the priority of where the capital
But you
funding is.
got a 10, 20, 30 years,
Yeah.
in the plan, so.
But we discussed a while ago the idea about when the percentage of the gaps arrived at a certain level with the development between point A and point B, then the county would be required to complete the
gaps.
sidewalks. Because they could go forever. If five developers were doing meeting their requirements, but there are all those gaps, and at a certain percentage, you have 60% or 70% of the lots or the space developed, but because you have that 30% left, there's gaps there, and none of the people that live there can safely utilize the sidewalk because it doesn't exist.
Okay, 'cause you
That's
can't
just in
get
the
there.
case of sidewalks. At some point, the county does need to step up at some percentage and say, let's contribute. But we talked about that before, and my head is foggy that far back. It might
We
be-
had a lot of this discussion.
Yeah, we need to vote, for about 25 minutes on this. So, all those in favor of the motion as read by Sharon Lee, raise your hands.
Nine.
All those opposed?
8.
And any abstentions, that adds up, okay. We talked about, I thought we talked about this in
Maybe I missed Karen Hansen. Karen, where were you? Yes, sir.
Put you on the spot.
I was on the, not passing it, but too many.
It seems to me when we talked about this before, we talked about the idea of making this a recommendation to the county. Are people in favor of that?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, so let's note that we'll put that in. the
Legitimate
of our Outside of APFO recommendations. Okay, let's take a 5-minute break, if we can do it that quickly, and then we'll come back with number 20. Okay, just one thing, while everybody's here, we did a poll to see what day in March worked best for people to get together to approve our report. And it's looking like March 9th. I got 20 people available for March 9th, 18th for the 16th and 23rd, and 3 people who didn't respond. So March 9th, put that on your calendars.
And that's at Iron Bridge on Allen Street.
We're gonna do that when it's done, and go back to our original time, hopefully, because what we're gonna do is draft the report,
You're gonna say that.
send it out, get comments back, incorporate as makes the most sense, and, you know, as long as they're not conflicting with each other, and this would kind of be a final review. Certainly we can make changes then if the group wants to do that, but hopefully it won't take forever, so 7 o'clock
If we do it at Iron Bridge, we'll have a lot of creative.
on March 9th.
A lot of creative ideas.
Well, it'll all be cooperative and say yes, yes, yes to anything anybody brings
Well, if
up.
everybody says, hey, this is great stuff,
Right,
let's
you got it.
let's go with it, then we will be there. So March 9th. Okay.
March 9th, in all seriousness.
No, we're talking about going to Iron Bridge.
March 9th?
Well,
Nice try.
there was
It'll
some-
take half an hour and then we get our break.
Okay.
Tell them to get ruined for the tap.
We have
You said tonight at 7.
the night is set.
But it will
We don't
start
have a lot
again.
of time, that's the earliest, we need to work on
It used to be that.
that. Probably,
Some
yeah.
round.
I don't know.
It used to be the,
What we did is draft an outline.
money bucket.
Yeah.
Really?
Okay, so we have 8 items that have been claimed by people, and let me just quickly go over the 4 that weren't claimed and make sure that we can just wipe them off, because that'll give us like an extra minute and a half per topic of the other ones. Number 21, fiscal, vary by district. I don't know if you even remember what that was. Nobody jumping up to grab that one? Number 26, maintenance of facilities as part of APFO, operations costs. No? Okay. Number 27, clarify cost-sharing language for grade-separated intersections in downtown Columbia. Is that something we were just gonna do anyway?
We had a broader motion that covered everywhere.
Yeah, I think that's right. We will do this every.
Downtown Columbia should be no different.
Right.
Unless it's specific.
Okay, so we,
But is it specifically language?
Yeah, the third intersection is specifically language in the downtown Columbia.
Part of their secret.
Yeah, for one of the secrets in the plan.
So we voted positive for this before. We can do a quick.
Well, no, we don't even have to do it if nobody's putting forth a motion.
Oh,
Well, we didn't exempt town center
We didn't
from what we
exempt it,
passed
yeah.
before, did we? I don't think.
Think
So
so.
it's just clarifying language.
They have a higher standard than anywhere else.
Yeah, you got that right.
Okay,
I
so,
believe you do it.
so we don't need to do that one then? And then number 29, health, as opposed to health care.
That was mine originally.
I thought you were health
And
care.
the health, I think I sent you guys an email.
You said health care.
Yeah, the health, number 29.
Yeah.
They were taken by that.
Okay, okay,
You can delete. If
okay.
somebody else wants
So
to.
we
Which
have.
one?
29.
29. So we have 8 items and we have about an hour. So let's go with 6 minutes, 7 minutes per item. And I'm gonna try to set a timer here, see if this will work. The first one being number 20, Diane, incorporate downtown regulations in all growth revitalization areas. And I think yours was actually kind of a different take on that.
Yeah, for some reason, when we were talking about the roads and the traffic, I thought that we had different levels of traffic that we were using in downtown Columbia.
We do, we have what they call constraint intersections that are failing intersections, but because there's no mitigation possible, like Broken Land Parkway and all that, they're a lower standard than the rest of the county standards. Just because there is no mitigation that can really be done at that, especially that's the worst of it right there.
Yeah, okay. But in thinking about it, while we were having that conversation, I was thinking if we had better things, because in our new growth and revitalization areas, we're adding, I forgot the piece of paper, I've written it all out, but we're adding new growth to old areas that were designed a certain way. So we're now using these areas in a different way, and that's not how they were designed. So by using the old tests on these areas, we have an already built environment, and we have people that own businesses and homes in there, and the already built environment is being kind of trashed sometimes when we stick every little, pot and corner and fill it full of things. We're adding more traffic where we already have roads. So in the growth and revitalization areas, I think if we lowered the amounts, if we took I wrote it into 2 different bills. If we change the current LOSE standard for state roads to the D standard, so that we have to bring our standards up higher as we put the new growth in and figure out what's happening. And so,
That's the debate,
and this is just for the growth and redevelopment, because we are redeveloping areas that people already live in, and we need to make sure that they can still get home, which again, I can't, and that's because of new growth. So that's what I wrote it as 2 different. Because the downtown is so confusing, I can't really use that the thing that we talked about before, but I think if we just change the standards on what we're putting in the growth, I think it would behoove the county, because we have a lot of people that pay taxes that bought into this county and now can't even get from one place to another, and I'm just one of them. In the 15 years since I lived here, I just can't get home. They moved where they were gonna put certain things, they were gonna move 29 down below, they were gonna put 100 farther south. They've stuck it all up there, but they haven't done anything to mitigate the people that actually still live there. So if we're going to continue to grow, not in the west anymore, and all in the east, so I think all the high growth areas, we need to lower the standards down to make sure that we can actually use the roads that we have. Because it's not working very well in a lot of different places.
Why do you single out state roads?
Well, I wrote 2 different ones, to change the current LOSE standard for state roads to a D standard only in the growth and revitalization, and then to change the current LOSD standard for county roads to C standard.
She's basically taking the current standards and making them one better.
One better on each one.
But you wrote them separately, anticipating that what, you might get one, not the other, or?
No, I just wrote it separately, just to make it consistent for me, it was
For me,
easier
it
for
should be
me.
1A, 1B.
Yeah,
1A,
this is
1B.
what
You
we're
could
doing here, we're
understand
dropping
yourself.
this one down, and then we're dropping this one down.
But they're a package though,
They can be.
I mean, I don't know why you would not, but maybe somebody would just, I don't know.
I think we voted on something almost exactly like this already.
Well, we kind of talked about it for the whole county, but we didn't talk about it for
Well, we excluded Columbia here.
Yeah. And so this is for the growth and revitalization areas only, and that's why I put in there only, because it's not for the west, it's not for these other places, which I think is what Bash is thinking for. But this is for where we are growing and we're putting the growth, and we need to be very careful where we're putting the growth. Because we already have built environments here, and that's something that I find important. We have big old neighborhoods that we have here, they're important for Howard County, the areas that we have, and we need to be able to still guarantee the people that live there that the new growth isn't going to make it any worse than sometimes it has. So I think if we take these new areas and make sure that we're taking care of the traffic, and dropping the two levels, I don't see why that would be a problem. But currently, the one is, they're at E and D or something, so we would move from D to C, or C to D.
Okay, do you want to propose on the separate motions though?
Yeah, I think so. Whatever.
Okay, go ahead, propose the first one, and we need a second.
Okay. To change the current LOS E standard for state roads to a D standard only in the growth and revitalization zone.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any more discussion?
Do you want these together?
Yes. Yes, sorry.
10
seconds.
Blah, 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 blah. Okay.
11.
We did discuss this before. I mean, in generalities. But the question became, if I recollect, because we were very involved in it, was state roads, going from E to D. I think that the delegation had to approve that. And then the consensus was, well, not consensus, but the concern was from this audience that you can't do that because the delegation won't pass it. And I said, well, put it forth. So unfortunately, it's gonna have that attitude, motion one, not gonna pass at all.
Does this committee want to recommend that state delegation?
I do, but I don't think the rest do. I don't know. Absolutely, I do.
I want to throw out just one other point. Somebody, very Walt's State Highway tell me that currently they're debating having the state take over all state for that APFO regulations. That doesn't mean it's passed, doesn't mean we don't need to review it. This committee needs to know that out there in Annapolis, somebody's going to be taking over that whole component from the counties. Not sure how well that will be taken by the counties, but.
Student, response to yours, didn't we have another portion where we had roads and the state said we had to do this, the county had said, no, we're gonna move it up a level with road. Do you remember the conversation?
I think we have the power to, we just have to,
Yeah.
it would be delayed a long time, but it's still up to the state to say, I'm gonna give you
But
money
it's
for this.
inverse. I thought the county said you're okay to go, but the state said, we don't need that improvement.
Right, so it's a funding issue too.
Right, holds up stuff that
Mhm.
you can't get done.
Okay,
I mean, you can implement this law in a local way, you don't need the state delegation to do that, it's just that's the
Well,
position
without-
you end
It's never
up
gonna
in.
happen, you can't get the.
There's no money.
I'm just saying that's the position you end
So
up
it's
in,
just-
yeah.
Well, we're not trying to do it all over the county either, we're trying to do it in these high growth areas where we're putting high growth on top of already built environments. So,
okay, all those in favor of the motion, raise your hand.
2, 3, 4, 5.
Opposed?
1, 2, 13.
Okay, no abstentions. Motion number 2?
Are we giving reasons why?
No, yeah, we gotta do it quickly. This is
All
okay.
right, if we're gonna do it.
Go ahead.
Reasons why it failed?
Yeah.
He voted for
We
it,
wanted,
so he wouldn't be able to give those reasons.
anybody want to put forth that?
Yeah, so much of what we have on state roads, that the level is moved to D on state roads. We're shut down and we can't mitigate past them. So we never,
They'll never put
we're shut
everybody-
down, we don't get to make
all right,
the
and that's another
improvements.
reason why I did this in two different separate
So
motions.
the county
Now,
one,
So if we can deal with the county roads, so that's to change the current LOSD standard to county roads to a C standard only in the growth and revitalization zones. And what that would do is allow things that we're allowed to deal with. If the county, we don't have to deal with the state at all, this would still help us in all of our growth and revitalization areas. Because we need it.
Do we have a second?
A second.
Okay. Any more discussion on this one? Okay, all those in favor? statement of opposition?
Why do people oppose it?
I'm asking. We have one more statement.
I don't think the level of service should be any different in growth and revitalization areas than anywhere else. And in fact, you might argue the opposite, because you're trying to encourage growth in those areas. You might even accept a lower level of service. Yeah.
There is an existing infrastructure. That's not just what you do.
Number 22, new metric, healthcare, other than EMS and already discussed healthcare. And I had something from Stu and also something from Steve.
Yes, and I'd like for Steve to go first if he so desires, because I look at his motion, and unless I hear otherwise, I think it's very good.
And this, I was just trying to respond, particularly Brent's concern about the hospital water disappearing, and I'm saying, wait a minute, why don't we encourage people to have, facilities, care facilities in them to be able to do things? And, still gotta take the road test. I mean, I don't know why you would take the application test if it's a senior project, so.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are you talking about age-restricted development though?
Yes.
Okay, because it doesn't really say that.
No, it's not.
We don't have school test.
We don't have school test already. That's correct.
No, what I'm
It's
saying,
already,
they're not age-restricted.
I'm sorry, I didn't say it, but it's
Are
already
you
on.
saying to exempt projects with continuing care, et cetera, that are age-restricted projects?
Right.
They are, and I guess I should have said age restricted.
Yeah, we need to
was the
say that,
intent.
because otherwise.
No, you're right.
I think Steve agrees with you.
Yes, absolutely, age restricted, because I don't think,
That was-
If you're,
that is
but
it.
if you're, they wouldn't have to, you
That's
couldn't
not
have
age
continuing
restricted.
care if somebody is disabled, they could be in there, they're not age restricted. Right? They're not producing kids, but they're not, right?
You could, that was not my intent, was age restricted, because I think that's where it's needed. You're right, you could do it that way.
We had allocation on the discussion of allocation.
Because
Letting people put it, that word
Steve,
Yeah.
so when you mentioned continuing care, is this, the way it works now is if it's a nursing home or assisted living house, and these things are hard to, their definitions are nuanced, but if they don't have a kitchen, and like, then in an individual unit, then it's exempt from allocations. If they're individual units with kitchens, then it's considered like a restricted dwelling unit, and then they do have to take the allocation.
Okay, then I
So
would
when you
wanna
say continuing care, or.
I guess I would want to say ones with kitchens too, if people are taking care of them in that facility, whether they got a kitchen or not.
Yeah, like, so a good
I mean,
example.
like a Charlestown type thing.
Right, and there's one of those being built now.
But Norris Grant would be,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Those
there's,
grant had to do allocations.
right, except the nursing home part of those grants.
That did not.
Right,
So,
because you had, yeah.
yeah, so it,
Right, that's a kind of.
So continuing care.
We want to encourage,
Yeah.
we want to encourage the care facilities.
I guess the rationale of that is that they still require public services, and they're still units, so therefore APFO should apply to that. Age restricted units are exempt.
From schools.
From the schools,
Right.
not the allocations.
Right, well, I'm saying they take the road test anyway, obviously.
Yeah.
Is
So
there a
for
second?
example, yeah,
Second to the motion?
well, I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
So in a case of, like, for example, I'm just throwing this out, a Lorien. Let's say Lorien wanted to build another facility. Under this particular motion, the way it's written now, what would be included or excluded?
Well, I think now,
In the test.
if Lorien is built and it's a nursing home or assisted living, and they don't have kitchens in individual units, then it's exempt anyways from allocations. They don't need allocations. It's considered an institutional use.
Okay, so
The definition, they
the
changed
unit
it.
allocations would not be, and the road test,
They still have to take the road test.
This helps with a progressive facility that we have.
You go from one to, yeah.
That's it.
Right, that's
Like-
right, yeah.
Again,
Just like it
Like
was.
those,
Like no
hard
camping.
camping.
Just like it was.
So the only thing this is
Yeah,
changing
like-
from what currently exists is that the unit has a kitchen, it has to take the test now, needs an allocation now.
Right.
And under this motion would.
It was.
Right, that's the only thing this is changing.
That's
right?
right, that's right.
Well, Steve, are you intending to include 55 plus or just continue?
I was 55 plus is what I was intending to. I mean,
Yeah.
With
that's
care,
the
with
idea.
healthcare.
55 bus that has these
It
type of
has this
facilities.
type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gotta be,
I guess I always think age restricted
It
be.
can't be a street.
it can't be like a
Just a straight.
per stone
Right.
type
But
of
bees
Montgomery
or
Road.
whatever.
Yeah.
Right, right. It's gotta have it here.
Okay, so continuing care is the right word. I don't know if we have a good definition in the county.
Transitioning from independent living.
Right,
to-
it's the state nursing, because they have all these rules.
Yeah, they probably could link it to a state test.
Where you buy into it, right, you put all your assets into it. And
I
then-
don't know if it has to be that way, but
Yeah,
that's the way they all work.
Big deposit.
It's a big deposit.
Yeah.
You're there for the rest of your life.
Right.
So,
And there's
so I don't know if that's
certainly
the definition to it.
encouragement to build these types of facilities.
So could we, have a referendum unless there's more discussion?
Yes, let's cover red again.
I guess exempt, age restricted, I'm saying 55 plus, projects with continuing care and or intermediate care facilities incorporated. Do we have to talk about the kitchens? I mean, you know,
I think that definition's in it.
from the APFO schools and allocation test, because they don't take the schools test anyway. We don't exempt them from roads test, and I just say because the projects help our elderly population, reduce the need for other medical facilities in adjacent senior homes, and I know about the schools.
So do we have any current facilities like this on the books in the next 2 to 3 years that this situation would apply?
No, I don't know of any.
I think the only one that's being built is.
Is Miller's Grove. One next to the library down there.
That's the only one, that's the only one.
Is that being built right now?
Yeah.
So they'd be exempt from this anyway, of course.
They've already,
They already took the allocation.
No, I realize
Yeah,
that. I realize
yeah,
that. If we get
they
something-
would.
So there's no more in the pipeline that you know of?
Then I know there's no more in the plan.
Brent?
So trying to compare this, you brought up the Lorien example. I have friends who run calls in and out of Lorien on a regular basis. It's a very high load on our EMS system. Would this be the equivalent potential load on the EMS system? I know it's saying reduce the need for medical facilities for life care,
But isn't there a revenue source? Isn't there any sales tax?
No.
They're not there. No, we pay for Charles
I still like you, sir.
Oh, don't let him.
That is in the spec.
That's right.
The argument is that.
We never fought out.
Any other questions,
So the
comments?
concern here is that we may create a situation which may increase the service.
Yeah, I think if we would. I think that a lot of these matters of time goes to.
Yeah.
You gotta get a need certificate from the state and then.
It's not easy, guys.
Not
easy.
Right, yeah, and they have to be 50% purchased.
Resold.
Right.
More than that.
67%.
Oh, really?
Somewhat, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's why it took Miller's Grant for so long.
Okay, are we ready to vote?
I think so.
All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand.
Steve's a hero, isn't he?
Not yet.
16.
All those
How many?
opposed?
16.
Wow, I told you.
Two opposed.
We're on the same side all the time,
We just
all
need
the
to
time.
add age
cold.
restricted.
Yeah,
We read it, yeah.
Okay, yeah, it is, so, yeah, it's in there, all right.
That passed?
yes.
Terrific. Oh, my goodness.
Okay, move on, yours, Sue.
Okay, mine real
Did
quick.
you do it, Posey with you?
I kind of got it. The increase matters,
Okay. All right, Stu, your healthcare.
Yeah, I think you all have it here. Yeah,
Yes.
this is in no way, I'm not too optimistic, but anyway, this is in no way going to pass because I heard that the major concern is that Howard County Hospital is a private entity, therefore we, the county, can't do anything and we're not involved. Well, folks, I think that is not the right response. However, that one guy laughing over there. However, I think it is our responsibility to be cognizant of the fact that we've got, as they say in the Music Man, we got problems in River City, and then some. Now, I know for the developers and builders, you're gonna say, Stu, you know, you're wet behind the ears, the hell with this motion. So I'm gonna leave it as it is, but you know, people have to realize that we, Howard County Citizens Association, are very involved in this. We have met with several occasions, the previous president, Broccolino, about it. We had good meetings with them. We have met with Steve Snellgrove, good meetings with him. On the Howard County website, 2014, you've got 73,000, almost 74,000 people that have visited the emergency rooms. I've experienced it big time with family members, and they've got major problems. And this is a quality of life issue, and that's all I'm going to say on this.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion, questions?
Did we voted on something similar before? What was the?
That was yellow alerts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That was with the EMS. Yeah. And that's what we had met on yellow alerts with Broccolino, big time.
So just to clarify, if the weight is more than what this says, all development in the county is shut down until it gets better?
That's what it reads, yes, sir.
Okay.
And I know that that's not going to go over very big with some of the people in this audience.
And this
But that's
doesn't,
beside the point.
this doesn't have anything to do with whether the patients are Howard County
It's
residents or
21
not.
meetings, sir.
No, this one.
Okay.
Stu, this doesn't have anything to do with whether the patients are Howard County residents or not.
No.
So if a bunch of people start coming in from a different county because they don't happen to have a
We only
hospital.
have, we only have one hospital in this county. And we've got major problems. We've got hospitals closing up. I'm just throwing it out because I have been extremely concerned about quality of life issues, as the fire chief was, and got nowhere.
Discussion. Call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand.
Six.
All those opposed?
Did you say sick or sex?
Hospitals.
I hear you say.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 11, missing one, 6, 11.
It's Abby's.
Oh, and Abby's
Oh, what abstention, okay.
Well, where's that coming to an end? What was the number?
6,
Not sure if you, not sure if you.
6, 4, 11 opposed, 1 abstention.
Why are they opposed?
I only did it because I wanted you to be right. So you said that we weren't gonna pass it. I only voted against it because I wanted you to be right.
Sir, you're the second one I'm gonna give my coat to.
For somebody who wasn't going to spread it around, now you're spreading it everywhere.
How'd you vote?
I mean, I think
Against
it-
it?
it's-
Well, you already told me, you already told me you were against me,
Well, this one is because we're not in control.
6 to 11 to 1.
Well, I think that's a poor excuse.
Well, the
Right.
reason I voted against it is there's no reason to believe that increased wait time is due to development. It could be aging population who have always been here. We don't see the correlation between new development and need for healthcare. And, oh, by the way, I've been to the hospital and had to wait 4 hours in the ER. Most of those people don't need to be in the ER.
Well, we can't help that.
Well, yeah, we can. People
Well, how do you,
can
okay, that's another
learn
stuff.
to
We gotta
go
move on,
to
move on.
the urgent care
Move on.
center, yeah.
Education.
It's school's fault.
Next,
If we didn't have relocated.
Patrick, recreation parks, Brett.
Parks and Recreation is frequently overlooked, but it is a critical component. It's in our capital budget, which means that it is something that, as we grow, has an infrastructure component. The infrastructure is a little more unusual, in that it's trees and grass and ponds. It's also skate parks and swim centers and the like. At the moment, as we grow as a county, we have more people with the same amount of land. It would be especially imperative. I've heard recently we're trying to make cuts to our program open space funding, as well as other forms of funding that may go to the Park Service, that we at least meet a minimum level of service. Dave could probably speak to the amount of land per person as a measurable unit.
We have, the state sets a state standard and it's per 100, it's a, I don't know exactly the exact number. We're over that in Howard County. What as our population stands right now. Now, again, all of it is not, a lot of it's in passive, a lot of it's steep slopes, and it's a lot that the county, the developer has option when he has open space, that the county wants, especially along stream beds, and all the county will take it, because they're protecting the stream beds, is what you're trying to do. But we're above the standard, so we can use, now we do, part of the transfer tax goes to project open space, which is a state thing that gets rated all the time, and I mean, that's another subject. But there is, the part of the transfer tax that goes to the project open space that Senator Clark actually started. Anyway, and so we do get money from that. Well, we're above the state standard, so we can use half of our money towards facilities now, instead of just property. So I think that we're covered, and we get the property, as we got over 8,000 acres of parking in our county.
Understood.
Yeah.
My particular neighborhood's lacking of it.
Right, I mean, we built North Laurel, and it's overcrowded, I mean, it's well used, let's say it's not overcrowded,
But
but.
this isn't about me, this is about Howard County.
No, right, I agree.
And as we add more and more people, the open space will be critical. Luckily, we have it covered, so this shouldn't be a major imposition for some time to come. But at least we've put it in, because I believe we've seen growth of what, 30,000 people on the books for the next couple decades here.
Yeah.
That will require additional open space as we get denser, and that open space is gonna cost more. But luckily, we're ahead of the game.
We're ahead of the game, but we also do a comprehensive parks program every 5 years, just as we do a developing monitoring report every year. So that's in place that goes towards the capital improvement program, and so we monitor that. We have a program for that it's done every 5-year program, to make sure we maintain that. So I don't know what the metric would be. That would be my question. What would you expect from as APFO?
Well, I am open.
Yeah, I mean,
Seems like
that's what I'm
you're very aware of the criteria, and we're under a time constraint now. But this is critical.
Diane?
And it's critical for later on.
Oh, yeah, for future generations, I agree.
Diane, okay, quick question. In California, as they built the new developments, they were required to put in small neighborhood parks in the actual developments that you could actually walk to. When I moved here, I found that the park that I could walk to is just bushes and overgrown mass mess, and there was no park that you could actually walk to. And it's still sitting there, and we can't get the park put in, and then we finally managed to get some funding for it. They had a meeting about whether to put it in or not without ever talking to the people about what you could actually put in there. In California, we actually had meetings that talked about what, so each park was different. But they required each development to have little neighborhood parks for the kids, and it was really, it worked extremely well, and it just really did a nice job. And it's been proven that areas that have these parks and have more parks or whatever, that they maintain their value, and it's, it's one of these stats that if the more parks are going, the higher the value of the neighborhoods. So I don't know if do we require any of these small parks?
And the subdivision rules, when they do a subdivision, yes, but it's not necessarily run by the Recreation and Parks.
There's those CA.
Yeah, or, in the subdivisions,
But not everybody's in CA, I mean, that's the
yeah,
problem.
but what I'm saying is in the
County's not.
subdivisions, a lot of times it's managed by the homeowners
And
association.
County has
It's
it,
not-
the rest of the county doesn't, so we still sit here, but, CA does all the rest of the stuff, but the rest of the county has these spots where we don't put it in, so, I would love to see them in all the new developments so that we have this, but how you're gonna get it done, I'm not sure. But again, I know that when we built that way, it really was much nicer, because every single neighborhood had somewhere where you could walk. And I literally moved here, my kid could not walk to any parks. They put these huge parks in, and they stick them over behind 100 and everything else, where you can't even get to it. The park just sits there. That was the craziest thing now. You can't get to it. You just cannot.
One thing to keep in mind in Howard County, there's not going to be any major subdivisions moving forward as much So I'm thinking in California, it might have been,
They're just building,
they're building, and these are big developments, right?
They-
With like lots of homes, so it
They
makes sense.
planned the big ones and they
Yeah.
planned the small.
So even the smaller infill
Yep,
ones.
Yep, and then the big ones, they knew they were coming, so you
Yeah.
knew that eventually they, you know, they just, the pot of money went to.
But again, what is the metric we're trying to propose?
That's what I was gonna say, isn't this again something for regulations to discuss versus a metric of, if this isn't here, then you can't move forward, you're
Yeah, that
gonna
was-
have to put it in.
Yeah, then I'd like to see the other neighbors get it first.
We already have a requirement to provide 400 square feet of active recreation area per unit.
Right.
In addition to the passive open space. So we have two requirements to meet by regulation.
So the active is flat where you can actually use it,
Yeah, it's gonna be flat.
not wet.
Yeah. Can't be on a slope, it's gotta be central, it's gotta be, usable.
So a
Not on
lot of what
floodplain.
you're talking about, Diane, is in the subdivision regulations.
But they don't have to put a park on it, they just have to put it in the land.
It's a lot
You're
of still
allowed to,
controlled
and
by
there's
the
some-
homeowners
there's some
association.
Exchanges that you can make instead of doing a bunch of open space, you can put in benches or horseshoe pits or whatever. You don't see much of that, you see mostly gravel.
So our current ratio that we're using for the state is what?
I don't know, I don't want to tell you that because I'm not sure what it is. I know we're above it. It's per 100 people or 1,000 people, the state says you need this much land to do it. Now, it doesn't divide, it doesn't say we need this much active, we need this much passive. And the problem is, we have probably 8 regional parks, 6 are developed. We've got regional parks that are sitting, and if you look at the budget numbers of what we get, you know, I think they're doing very well at what we're developing. It's just, we're down on the bottom, you know, it's a matter of money. It's that simple.
So,
If there are 11,000 acres remaining to be developed, and 25 to 35% of them will be open space, we're gonna get 3,500 acres of open space.
And
And
the park
park,
system, right,
but it'll be,
yeah, the park system does a good job of trying to acquire space that meets park need, whether it's passive or pathways through perhaps, or active. But they're involved in the subdivision process, so when the open space requirements come through, the park looks at that and say, oh, that's a good piece because it connects to this piece. So there's a lot of coordination with the parks that kind of builds into the subdivision.
you understand this is a very sensitive subject for me, because as we speak, Savage is being developed into townhomes on a historic site. And my neighborhood regional park got sold off the edges of it for development. And obviously, there are areas where had we had appropriate coverage, we might have done better, but we aren't. I'm very proud of some of the things we've done, but some of our Park Service shortcomings are abominable.
Well, and in Eastern County, you knew the process we went through to buy where North Laurel sits.
I
You
understand.
knew-
I
you probably
understand
know
the
that
others,
process.
Going back to 1890 and all
Yeah,
that.
and it was what, 100 different lots we had to purchase?
For
And
the,
finally, we finally had to go to eminent domain on like last half a dozen of them because nobody knew who they owned. It was, they've been so long that, you know.
those sound like weaknesses within the government, not within
Yeah.
the development of open space by the development community.
let's go back to the core of this. Adequate public facilities is to provide or ensure adequate public facilities as we grow. Right now, I'm hearing we're covered, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't have something in here, a benchmark to build off of. I say for a motion, for adequate public facilities, that we set a metric based off the state's person per land area ratio. If the county is falling short of that ratio, new projects will contribute on a per person per acre to a pool as determined by the Park Service. I know that's kind of vague. I'm not even going down the programmatic component of it, because those costs can be infinite. But land is finite, and we should preserve it at the ratio that we're growing.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any Any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion as just proposed by Brent, raise your hand. Opposed? An abstention? An abstention? Somebody is just not raising their hand high enough.
Dan, did you vote?
She did.
Extension is fine, that's fine.
Alrighty. Number 24, alter downtown Columbia incremental increase of CLD requirements at the poll.
Right. Okay, so right now in downtown Columbia, the APFO is different than the rest of the county in terms of the traffic test. Instead of level of service D, it's allowed a critical lane volume of 1,600, which is a little bit higher. My initial concern was that because intersections may be physically constrained, it might be hard to mitigate. And if the idea is we're urbanizing downtown Columbia, that we ought to loosen the standard. In Montgomery County and Bethesda, which I think is oftentimes held out as an example of what we're trying to create in Columbia, the test is 1,800, CLD of 1,800. However, in talking to people at Howard Hughes that have been dealing with this, they're okay with the 1,600, but there is an inconsistency between the design manual and APFO. APFO says 1,600, the design manual says 1,500. So my motion is, and this would go in the parking lot because it's not really APFO, but just to recommend to the county that in the design manual they raise the 1,500 to 1,600 to make it consistent with what's currently in the APFO test for downtown Columbia.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Yes?
What is the right answer, 1,500 or 1,600?
I mean, it depends what you're trying to accomplish.
Under constraint.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea that if APFO existed years ago, there would probably be no cities. Because you just can't, if you picture every intersection in Baltimore, at peak hour, it would fail any reasonable APFO test. So the fact that it should be a little bit lower standard in a more urban area, to me, makes sense. So this is approximately now, but by allowing 1,600, I think it's about an extra, I think level service D might be 1,450 or 1,420 or something like that. So it allows about 10% more traffic at an intersection than in the rest of the county.
Safeguard.
At 1,600, right.
Safeguard is the queuing analysis that they've got to do.
Yes, right, they have to do some other analysis too.
Other questions or discussion? Take a vote. The motions, restate the motions, since we don't have it in front of us.
Okay. Change in section 4.9.1 B, of the design manual. Right. All references to CLD 1,500 should be changed to CLD 1,600, consistent with APFO for downtown Columbia.
All those in favor? Way high, way high.
16,
I'll put two hands up.
That's right.
16,
Opposed?
2.
And no abstentions.
None of that. Two medals.
Why the opposition?
It's worsening traffic standards.
Okay, Stu and Brent both claimed police. Stu, we have yours, so why don't you start? It's, I have that in front of you.
Okay.
And just for reference,
pardon me?
I'm going to defer all this to you, Steve.
Oh, okay, the pressure off.
Pressure's on.
That's right.
Oh, my goodness, I can't handle
I
it.
heard him say you're on your own.
That wouldn't be the first time, sir. Nor the last time. Okay, folks. Obviously, I was extremely disappointed with the nothing about fire getting passed in this APFO test. but now we're gonna try police. I have handouts. Some of it actually is in your folder, I think.
Yeah, there's more.
And on the back, it has crime statistics, but there's another part of it which didn't get publicized. And I do have about 20 of them. Pass this around for you. Put them in your bed tonight. Okay, the one thing that's not on the back of your sheet, where it says crime statistics, is that if you go on the Howard County website, under police, there's an annual report. It's 2014. And the thing that absolutely startled me, they have facts at a glance. And there's 108, in 2014, there was 183,000, almost 184,000 9/11 calls. I was shocked. I mean, we have 300,000 people, for every 9/11, that's 162. It's amazing.
Is that 911?
Yes, ma'am.
Because you say 9/11, and I
I'm
think
sorry, I'm sorry,
of New
911.
York City.
Yeah, okay, 911. Okay, thank you, Sheriff. Any event, we asked if you recollect, we asked the fire chief of those 184,000, how many of those are his calls in the fire? And I believe he said around 40,000.
78,000.
Is that what he said?
Yeah.
78,000?
Most of them were not fire.
Okay, okay, all right, that's good, thank you.
Yeah,
So we still have over 100,000 back in 2014 that are police.
You may be thinking about the 30 of the 78,000
Right.
were fire.
Majority of the
Fire departments are not.
Well, you give me credit for thinking, thank you, Tom. Appreciate that. But in any event, we had over 100,000 9/11 calls. That to me is a heck of a lot. Then you look at the motion I've made and the rationale behind it. And the rationale behind it is very simplistic. Because if we really believe in Plan Howard 2030, the general plan, it specifically talks in Chapter 8, Public Facilities and Services, about police. And it goes further with Policy 8.17, you all can read as well as I can, and it talks specifically about ensuring that we have adequate staff and equipment. So all I'm asking is that it's up to the police chief to make that determination, and if it's not in the capital improvement program, then he or she, or whoever it is, it's their responsibility to tell the council, that, or the exec, whatever, that we've got problems in River City, and we need extra money to make sure that we have adequate public facilities in the area of quality of life issue, the police. It's that simple, folks.
What do you, give me examples of capital improvement funds being used for police?
Pardon me?
What would capital improvement funds be used for in the case of police? We have two
Well,
police
that's up to,
stations.
okay.
Cars are,
That's a good question, Diane.
What
And
does that
I'm
mean?
gonna leave that up to that person in charge. Yeah.
No, but I mean, we can think this through. It's
well, my
not just
question is,
station.
why would capital funds solve the problem? It sounds to me like it's probably an operating budget
Well,
issue.
okay, then how about, just now, they just had, ironically, they just had a police promotion in the Manica room.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and there's 30 of them that got promoted. So I thought it was great. So, I don't know, when you need additional personnel, what funding is that under?
That's not right.
That's operating.
Then I'll include operating. Thank
And
you.
cars are operating.
Then I'll include
all that
operating
stuff.
in there as well.
It would be like a new
I'll amend it to include operating.
And in the capital budget, they identify mobile data police computers,
Oh,
a child advocacy center. They completed the Warfield renovation and addition, and a third police station, 21 million.
oh, where?
So,
In the Columbia area.
Thank you.
Columbia is part of
And we have what, north, south?
They're
and
gonna
middle?
put another one in the
Okay.
Columbia area.
Thank you.
But that's already in the budget.
Yeah,
So you're talking about something that's going to be identified that isn't being addressed by current budgets.
Yes, ma'am. With obviously new development.
This seems really subjective to me.
And this is against declining crime data.
Yeah.
Yes, pardon me, these statistics are wonderful.
Yeah, I love it.
We're doing a great job.
You're doing great, I don't think so.
Crime's going down.
These say it is. Okay. It's tremendous.
Prostitution vice is way down.
I'm really pleased about it.
And there have been
Listen,
no,
these guys are getting too much money, we gotta stop
look at that
funding.
complaints about truthfulness,
Doing such a
zero
good job.
complaints of truthfulness, which I think is extraordinary.
Well,
Yes.
the mere fact that you've got all these 911 calls.
Keep in mind too, that
I don't like
we
the
are
fact that you're being
told to
truthful.
call 911 for things like dead deer or whatever. Because our, no, we are encouraged to call 911 rather than you go to Baltimore City, you call some other number for
Okay,
that.
okay,
So-
listen,
Exactly.
listen, I am not sitting here
Yeah.
arguing the fact. I just think it's important, as I said, we didn't we have not passed any quality of life issues at all in this APFO committee, and I think it's absolutely despicable.
But we've also been told by the police chief that all of the growth projected is taken into account when they do their planning, that it is already planned for.
I think you need something in APFO to make sure that it's fixed. That's all.
Is that Abby?
Yeah.
Let Abby speak.
So, I was already know, part of the reason why I was late tonight is I actually went to go testify because my husband was robbed this weekend in Columbia. By gun, two men with a gun.
Wow.
And what did come out of it was that they do need more police. I went to the meeting tonight, and he said, we need more police, we can't do this. There's one police officer for all of Oakland Mills, 12 hours a day, that's it. So I do feel that there needs to be something. I'm not, part of what I stated tonight was that there's larger systemic issues why this is happening. And things like poverty, I mean, there's just a lot of social reasons. While I am hugely supportive of them investing more into this, and that's why I was there tonight, that's why I was late tonight, I don't know that it is necessarily related to growth. And this kind of goes to some of the other stuff that we were talking about. I think growth is a factor, but there's also so many other factors, and one of the things I brought up tonight was a few of those. So I do, I don't know, I love that this is here, I went immediately to the things that I need to look at, but I want to see more compelling data to show that it's directly related to growth, that it's happening, and that it's not other social issues,
Well, growth
laws.
growth is gonna be a factor.
But it may not be.
In 20 years from now, we're projected to have 100,000 more people here.
And another fire, another police.
Another police station and an increase in
You
the
got more
personnel. Yeah, well, that's in their plan.
Terrific.
I don't
So-
have it with me.
So would you say that third police station is a byproduct of growth? Do you need to
Absolutely.
grow?
Absolutely.
Would you say the forensics lab to catch up on back cases is a byproduct of growth?
It could be.
Infrastructure, it's not fair to charge gasoline in a car and maintenance, but when you buy a new squad car, that's a infrastructure item, and you may need more as you grow, correct?
Yes, sir.
And let me throw out the example I've used over and over. If our county were to double in size today, would require twice as much of everything. That would be a factor of growth, and that would be measurable.
I agree. But in any event, look, I know it's not gonna pass, so you get it. But like I said, we have after 21 meetings, we have nothing to show for quality of life issues. I think that's hard.
Well, disagree, but we're not gonna talk about that now.
Okay, that's very good prerogative.
Vote, anything else on the police issue? I guess we're voting on the motion that's in front of us here. All those in favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
All those opposed?
$13.
18, that's the right number. Okay. Brent, new metrics, solid waste disposal.
Stu and I were on a very long, very contentious committee on this very issue. we're very well versed on it, as well as recycling, mulching, and all the perils and interesting minutia of this subject. I'm not going to get into this in great detail other than let's look at what we have right now. Alpha Ridge is our primary solid waste disposal facility. It's, I don't know the acreage off the top of my head, 500 some acres, give or take. But it was a significant capital investment when we bought it. They spent nearly a decade going back and forth planning for Alpha Ridge. Right now, most of our solid waste is being handled by shipping it off to King George, Virginia. And it costs less per ton, so it's a more efficient way. But if that cost per ton changes, there may be a time when we bring this all back home. There's also a lot of initiatives to do a green Howard County or zero waste plan, the Maryland zero waste plan, where basically we have a more expensive way of processing our waste. It will have to go either to our Alpha Ridge or to subcontractors, and it will cost you more per ton to process this waste. With that said, it is infrastructure, and it's infrastructure that needs to scale up as we grow. Right now, with offloading most of it to Kings George, it's just a cost, so it's an operating cost. We're in good shape. However, if we switch our methodology, especially as listed in our 10-year plan, there's a potential that we may be back into very unpopular and very expensive land purchases. And as we grow, that resource will need to be contributed to. Again, I don't ask that growth pay for anything beyond what its impact is, but I would expect that they contribute what their impact is. Yes?
What does the trash tax we pay now go toward? $210, I think it is.
It goes toward the operating costs of Alpha Ridge and the.
So wouldn't it be logical if we need a new facility that we would increase that 210 to 500 or whatever it really costs to get us where we need to be?
So that would be logical for the operating component, but there's an infrastructure component.
So our taxes pay for that.
Well, right now, depending on when we paid off our bonds on Alpha Ridge, we have paid for that, but we may have to increase it.
You know, the executive summary of the 2014 to 24 solid waste management plan addresses this point, and they say that the revenue sources are adequate to cover the solid waste management costs.
Regardless of market, regardless of EPA guidelines?
For the next 10 years. They're saying, the people who are in charge are saying there's no problem. You got it covered.
Then again,
I just had a quick question. When I first moved here, I remember Dave Boyer talking to me about, I don't know whether it was Alpha Ridge or a different one, but we had another, it made part of Alpha Ridge, I'm not sure. He said that instead of just taking like the citizens that put stuff in there, that the construction companies were allowed to dump their stuff and it actually filled it up much sooner than they had planned on, and then they were forced to open a new one or something. Does anybody remember any of this?
New Cut Road.
That was the old New Cut where the dog
Yeah.
park and all that.
Right, so New Cut, so we started one, and then it was filled with construction stuff instead of what it was planned for, and so that would be an indication. I mean, that if they, then now they don't allow that.
But they don't do that now, they recycle, it goes to a recycle spot where they sort everything out. And if you're on a construction site, you don't, especially if you're building green. If you're building green, you don't throw anything away. You send it out, it all gets recycled.
And anything you send there, you pay for it by the ton.
You pay for it by the ton when tipping for it, but also if you go building green, you get so many points.
No, you used to sell it at Dave's Cove.
Or
You sell your country waste.
Yeah, or Potts County or whoever you send it down.
that is a valid point. Tipping fees used to be a revenue source, and it used to be you could only tip within the county, so they had a captive market. Then there were rules where said you can go anywhere where it's cheaper, which is why, certain areas
So
are
now, when you go to Alpha
accepting
Ridge,
waste.
you have to give your driver's license if you live in this county.
Right, if you're a county resident.
Yeah,
That's different than a
some
commercial
problem,
tip.
that's like-
Right, yeah, they've done that.
Used to be annual charge.
And you do have to pay for certain things. I had to pay for a picket fence.
Yeah.
Well, if they won't, if you've done a construction project.
Yeah, they
you're-
agree.
I had to
yeah,
drive
they-
down.
Yeah, you pay
Pay
for it.
for it,
You
yep.
know, so if you're doing a home
Nice
project,
and
they're
every
gonna
mulch,
get
you
it.
can buy mulch back on.
Cost me $15.
So we have an operating cost that is covered by the tax fee, but we do not
That's
have
right.
any mechanism to ensure we have adequate space if we convert back to local components, or funding things like more advanced recycling, and of course, there are all sorts of ugly things in sludge recycling and other components that are in that mix, which are expensive, and the EPA is changing its guidelines from year to year. So there may be times, just like out at near Alpha Ridge, where we need to put public water and sewer, where our water levels, the water contamination levels were out of whack. So the motion I'm putting out there is very simple. It's test for adequate capacity aligned to the 10-year plan with mitigation as necessary if not in compliance.
Can you read one more time?
Test for adequate capacity aligned to the 10-year plan with mitigation if we are not in compliance.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Shirley,
Mm-hmm.
any more discussion? No? Okay, vote. All those in favor of the motion? Those opposed?
Reasons why, you think?
Personally, I don't disagree that it's something we have to look at. I think we really should, but I don't think it's a growth issue. I think it's a whole county issue as we turn over the way we're taking care of our waste and green things and stuff like that. So I see it as being spread across everybody in the county if we're going to do some kind of capital.
They're already paying a fee for it.
We are,
at this point.
exactly.
So it's got a dedicated funding source right now
Exactly.
to make the operating at this point. But I don't think it's written that way.
Yes, I have a point.
Mhm.
To go back on the police, did we get reasons why you failed? You did? Just policing it.
Okay, and geez.
Oh, that is sad.
The last one, Diane, I was confused. I thought your other motions were something different. Yes, so it is 9:15. We have 15 minutes. We could either leave or we can talk about something else.
We have one more minute.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brent, I'm sorry.
Nice try.
I'm sorry. I saw Brent's name down here all these times. I
Brent's
thought
gonna
we
try to
were,
electrify us.
I thought we were at the bottom of the Brent list. Okay, go for it, Brent. Go for it.
Mr. Cole, are you sure?
Go ahead.
Quite honestly, this was a Stu's thing, but obviously any component of the capital budget is fair game for review for adequate public infrastructure. I took a stab at this, and obviously utilities are regulated separately. Utility regulations are separate, and there are a lot of things that wouldn't be appropriate for APFO because of the way they're managed. However, in the spirit of providing adequate public infrastructure within the scope of APFO, there is one thing that I saw, which is as we build our new public infrastructure, be it schools, police stations, forensics labs, fire stations, whatever, parks and infrastructure, we as a county usually are obligated to buy the least costly implementation of a development. And you can get into LEED standards and things of that nature. However, to get the lowest per lifetime operating costs usually is more expensive. And there's a delta between what is the cheapest form of construction of infrastructure what is the most efficient for long-term operation. And that's what I'm gonna propose in here, is a test when building new public infrastructure to accommodate growth, that it meets the best cost, which is implementation, to efficiency, which is operation, ratio. If the capital budget cannot provide that ratio, mitigation will be performed. So the short version is, if we have to pay an extra 10% more to get the green solar panel on a school, and we know that over the life of that school, that thing's going to save the county hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's in the public benefit. And also, we shouldn't pay an unlimited. We aren't going to put nuclear power plants in our schools. We need to find the best cost to operating ratios and mitigate for those.
So
Especially schools. What I see in the paper with the snow, how many million square feet do we have that we're heating and cooling? Ellicott City, this building here. As we grow, we should try to do smart work.
You know, you're
And I
right
think-
about that. It's just
I
not an
think
it's not
APFO
APFO.
issue. That's,
Yeah.
you're right, we should do that.
Absolutely.
But this is a mechanism to capture it.
Well, maybe I can just offer some observations on what you mentioned, LEED, and we are required to do green construction already. Now, that LEED and other tools like that don't necessarily force you to do solar. You can get your points in different ways. There is another interesting thing that's in discussion. The state they'll accept a green building code. But in order for us to follow a green building code in Howard County, it has to be adopted, and then it would apply to private development as well. It's not an APFO issue, but it's a very interesting issue to get a lot more green infrastructure, both private and public. So worth considering. Provide more information to people if you're interested in learning more about that. I support the idea of a green building code.
I think I actually put this on there a long time ago. And my question here is, what do we do when we build with burying our wires in the ground? And I'm almost sure that this was part of it. New development, are they required to be built underground? And like my house is, it's underground, there's a big huge telephone pole because the whole thing is in an old neighborhood.
There are exceptions.
Okay, so I think this was my original question with the electricity, is that you're required to put the lines underground. So in an older neighborhood, we're sticking new homes in, and they can stick it underground to get to the same poles, and they're still sitting there. Columbia had their wires buried, 30 years ago, and then they didn't do them correctly, so they had to rebury them. But the rest of the county is still sitting here, and we literally look like a throwback to the 50s. I drive down 40 and I drive down the street. I can't believe the wires and the junk that's hanging off there. And after, and I live in California, and they eliminated that. So there's just so many, where I live, they just made it part of when you're building, you had to get rid of all that stuff. And you go up 40 by the library, and all the coal is just laying over it. And so we're not, and that's like older infrastructure, so that's like an upgrade that needs to be done for the rest of the county. So I think my question was, what are we requiring when we build new? Because, so one house has this underground, and we still have all these wires that are, and the Verizon's on there, and, when they hit the telephone pole out front, I have to call 3 different people to come out and, we repair all the stuff, everybody and their brothers on the wires, and I think that was like an infrastructure thing that I just wanted to ask the builders, what are you required to do now, and how we could maybe do it better, would be my thinking, I guess.
We're really required to do what they tell us to do.
Which is what, right?
They be a monopoly.
They say, here's what we're gonna do, here's how much you're gonna pay,
incentives.
And we're dealing with a utility company, not with a county
Yeah, we're
government.
gonna do it. BG&E would love to bury all those, would love to bury all that, those wires, because it's really expensive to maintain.
Yeah.
They would love to bury it, but the question is, your electricity bill would go way up to be able to pay for all of that, it's very expensive.
Yeah, mine went round and round.
So it's a little money.
They get the opportunity to really stick it to us a lot of times, because if they can fix their problems with our money, they do it every time.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's buried in a concrete duct bank that costs more than the electric cabling costs. And, they tell you, you're right, they dictate what you want if you want power.
Especially you with commercial,
Yeah.
Do we still have a motion?
I'll wrap up the motion with test for public infrastructure requiring mitigation, meet the best cost to efficiency ratios, period.
And that does make sense, I mean, if it's one, if putting something in this way is in the long run going to be better off than just the immediate cost.
The geothermal, solar, extra insulation, whatever.
Dollar-wise, it's very painful.
But it would have to be, right? Is there any time frame in that?
I'm trying to keep it within the scope of growth, which is the only thing that's fair, is the mitigation provided by growth.
Right.
Is required to have that.
With your motion, how does that help this audience understand that it's APFO? Can you expand upon that motion?
I'm trying to get where you're going with that.
Well, there's people in here that says what you're talking about has absolutely nothing to do with APFO. So I'm asking you.
Okay.
Okay.
When we provide mitigation, be it a shovel full of blacktop, a new seat in the school, or any other mitigation that we're looking at, that we use the best practices going forward for the long-term benefit of our county and its citizens.
Aren't you suggesting a procurement regulation then?
It could creep into that.
Okay, so it's not
And that's the thing that is already in place. Under Alman, they did a law that requires at the local level, all the county and school facilities, and at the state level, we're required to do LEED, so.
However, LEED is a point generator, and the points may not necessarily generate that result.
We build better than LEED, so that's just the state requirement.
I got nothing against LEED, it's just the combination may not result in this.
I understand.
Well,
Okay, and we did have a second, right? Somebody seconded it?
I don't believe so.
Did anybody second the motion?
I'll second that.
Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? I'm not opposed to the idea, I just don't
Can
think
we,
it belongs in
can we
our.
consider putting in the?
Can we move it to?
Yes,
everybody with that?
absolutely. Okay, let's ask that. Are people in favor of putting that in our not quite APFO, the recommendations we'd like to make to the county?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all those in favor of that?
Closer.
Kara?
The recommendation instead of a
Yeah.
APFO requirement.
Or she's raised her hand now.
Hey.
Okay,
Sorry,
that
sorry.
works.
She needed some lobbying.
No, I think it's great, I think it's a
I'll
great
get half a
go.
started.
Okay, Brett.
And before we wrap up, I spoke with a lot of the children at my school, my daughter's school, Forestry Elementary. This APFO hearing throughout the last many weeks has been very important to their parents, and those that are aware of the importance, it's important to them. And I would be remiss, because so many have asked me to propose this, and it hasn't through the entire course, that I would like to propose a motion that elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools are rating for maximum capacity in terms of APFO is 100%, because they believe a full school is a full school.
Second,
Second.
discussion?
think what I said goes without saying.
All those in
Did
favor?
you say high school too, right?
Yes.
So you said 100%, okay.
100% no.
Opposed?
Wait a minute.
I said, okay, all those in favor?
I'll slack.
You don't want to close it.
Four.
Opposed?
Eleven.
Thank you for everything.
Well, there's the abstentions.
Abstentions?
Yeah, two abstentions.
I have something very fast.
Okay.
We didn't define the word minor. We said we were gonna do that. In APFO, when
Oh, minor subdivision?
it talks about the word minor or exempted minor subdivision. Minor is defined elsewhere as for, I think, fewer subdivisions. But there's just an assumption that that's what it is, but it doesn't actually say it.
Oh, really?
So in the APFO definitions, I would like to make a motion that we define minor
Okay, that's four.
as four or less.
Four or fewer homes.
Second.
That is, it's defined in the subdivision, right?
Yeah.
It's not, yeah.
You want to make
But we
it,
must include that in our.
but you want to make it,
So
you want to make it as defined in the subdivision regs, so if they change it there, we change it.
Yeah, I don't wanna change it, I don't wanna change it.
Well, it can go either way, they can change
Make it
either
any
direction.
Well, what Paul's mentioning though is it's for previously unsubdivided or re-subdivision. So it's not just the number, but it's
Right.
what the two qualifiers.
To put the whole definition in. Okay.
Or just tie it to it, so if they change it, it's always
She doesn't want to
consistent.
change.
So you don't have to
But
change.
my motion is to have it be what it is
Yeah.
now, and not to have it be.
Subject to change.
Able to be changed so easily elsewhere. Let them review APFO and change it if they think it should be changed later, that's
10
just
years.
my opinion.
And the four ties into a state, minor, major.
Or it's kind of a magic number.
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second? Do we have a second on that? Who was seconded? Who
Abby
seconded?
did.
Diane?
I
did. Abby did. Any more on that? To define a minor subdivision as four or fewer homes and blah, 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 whatever it says in the subdivision regulation, not.
See, Carl, take that out, love it.
Yeah. Whatever it
You got
says,
that, Carl?
but keep it that way, not just reference the subdivision regulations. Karen?
So if it's defined now as the same exact and then subdivision regs change, what is the process to change it now to align it? They would have to go through
Well, no, they could go
They'd
with
have to
county
change
council
the-
and change it.
The council would have to change the APFO.
They'd have to change that for law, but they can do that by county
But
council.
right now it's
It
not
would
defined
not
at all.
entail this whole process.
No,
It doesn't have
no.
any. No.
No, you don't have to test.
That's up to
We're gonna
them.
have to reconvene.
But right
You're gonna-
now, right now, it's not defined.
Karen was volunteering to share it.
Right now, it's not defined at all, it just says minor, and it has no definition.
No, I understand, and I'm like, if it's not
Are we
defined,
voting?
if it's not linked to subdivision.
It would
regs.
Exactly, it's defined now.
Are we
Are we
voting?
voting to vote?
She's clarifying her block.
Okay, we got that. All those in favor?
That's the way to end it.
That's right.
There you go.
A winning vote.
Unanimous at that.
16.
I'm
Bruce. Come on, Bruce.
Oh, we have someone against, okay,
Opposed.
16.
One, opposed?
So Bruce is buying the first round at Iron
Why?
Break.
Did that pass?
Why?
I want it to be the subdivision reg.
Whatever they say.
What's,
You
what was
just have
the
to type
vote?
in subdivision.
Why, we never got a,
What was the?
opposition for Brendan.
16-1.
Almost. So close.
Hey, I did something.
We've already
So
defined
close.
the number.
We voted against the high school test completely, we voted on the percentages and every other thing already.
It's the spirit.
The previous decision.
You want to end on a unanimous?
Okay, anything else?
You're buying first round at Iron Bridge.
I'm
Next.
fine with
So
that.
you guys will look for, in a couple weeks, a draft, and we really, really need you to read it as fast as possible, and as thoroughly as possible. And we'll figure out how logistically we will accept changes, whether you do a track thing or you tell us whatever, we'll figure out whatever works easiest for our configuration management, because you know I'm not very good at that, because otherwise this would look like this. And then, once you get comments back, we will incorporate and send it out again, and we will meet on March 9th and officially pass it. barring any typos or anything, and we can make changes that night if we need to. And then we'll be done. I'm sorry?
When people need to reply.
Yes, yes.
That's another story.
Yeah.
If people do not comment on the document, we will assume they like it as is. That's the way we have to do it. We're not gonna wait till we get 100% response. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, is that report going to be requiring a 2/3 majority?
Good question. Do you think some people won't approve the report that reflects what we did?
All I know is that, as Brent said, he and I were in the mulching task force. We got 24 meetings, so we need 3 more.
Yeah, what are we going to?
But that was a minority report and a majority report. And I tell you what, it was a horrible situation. But if you're going to stick with standards, you gotta have the 2/3, and it'll never pass the report. So you all need to make up your mind on what recommendation is, and have it a simple majority.
Well, it's gonna have the opposition opinion on every vote, so that, if you decide to be any more to a
That
minority.
doesn't mean you're just voting on what happened, if we can't.
A
summary of our vote.
Shouldn't the vote be whether you agree that the report accurately reflects what we did? Not that you agree with everything, because we all voted for and against.
Oh, yeah, that's a given,
It's supposed
okay.
to just
But
be a
what
technical
I'm
review.
talking about is, I don't know how you're gonna preface it and the contents.
We're not gonna
the good, the bad,
give,
the ugly.
we're not gonna give subjective assessments of what we've done.
We're not gonna.
We're not gonna say we did a wonderful job and we changed
We're
it.
not gonna give opinions to the task force?
No. We have 20.
Will we all get an award for this?
I'm withholding 3 of them.
Minimum.
That's one way to look at it.
We all
Last
get
hit.
a
One
special
description.
award.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Still lives here in downtown Bear County.
Here's the 3 now recommended. No, it's not gonna.
For the
That's
rest.
what it's supposed to do, whether we like what we did or not. Yeah.
Telling you, you keep it more.